And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Thursday, May 16th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is Joe Hagmann. He's my son, co-host, and together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. You're in for 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news analysis and information you need to know in these perilous times. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you so much. Just heard from people in various parts of the country of North America. I'm not going to name all the cities. I just want to say that we've got new listeners in Wisconsin. I just want to say welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We have new listeners in Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee. Again, I'll spare you the cities, but I just want to welcome you to our program. Folks, our schedule is we broadcast every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on the internet at homelandsecurityus.com. And, of course, we want to thank our colleagues to the north, as always, CanadaFreePress.com. Great people, I want to say great Americans. They really are, if you want to come right down to it. And I want to thank each and every one of you for trusting us, for putting your time here tonight with us. Welcome to the program. Joe, it's been a busy day. What's on our plate for tonight here? We've got so many
very
things
glad
to
to
talk
be
about.
here. Yes, we do have a lot to talk about. There is much going on in the way of news and information. Some topics and headlines we're going to be hitting today. First, the Pentagon plans to fight war on terror for another 20 years. Even after cutting off the head of Al-Qaeda, the United States Department of Defense does not believe an end to the war on terror is in sight. On Thursday, one Pentagon official predicted the mission against Al-Qaeda could continue for another 2 decades. And that from Russia Today. We'll get into more of that later.
This is perpetual terror or perpetual
Right.
warfare.
And I can understand how they would be fighting Al-Qaeda for another 20 years, seeing as all the weapons and money and ammunition and guns and tanks and planes and jets were given them. They're going to have enough to fight back for about 20 years. So makes sense. Also, Temco seeks permission to dump groundwater from Fukushima plant into the ocean. Officials from the Tokyo Electric Power Company on Monday met with the Fukushima fisheries
Isn't that pretty much what they're doing, though?
Yes, they already. Well, the water leaks into the ocean now, as opposed to purposefully dumping it. Which they want, what they want to do. Also, the White House Benghazi email dump shows a critical 2-day gap, and we're going to go over that. I know you have been going through those Benghazi emails, and you've had some of those for a while also. And there's a few stories we're going to get to on homelandsecurityus.com, our homepage. One is also the title of the show tonight, The Cloaked in Misinformation. And you opened the story stating, what is one of the most effective and expedient methods of taking an incident that is true and making it not only appear false, but outrageously and demonstrably false? And it goes on to talk about how we are being misled, how we are being distracted, and our focus is being taken away from pivotal information.
Oh, no, I understand. We are in a very dangerous period in this country. I want people to know that. I think people can sense it. I think you folks can feel it. I certainly can.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know exactly where we're headed here in terms of false flags. Could there be false flags? What kind of false flags? Are there going to be false flags across the country? But you've got a dangerous caged animal in the form of this administration. Of course, the scandals that we hear, apparently there are none. At least that's according to Lawrence O'Donnell. But you've got a very I don't know. I don't want to even say a battle weary, but some of the breaks in the dam of this administration are beginning to be seen. This, I believe.
And maybe what we should do is open up with an audio clip here, not of Lawrence O'Donnell, which we will get to his audio clip, but of Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews today
One of my
talked about
favorite people.
right-wing opposition to Obama is due to the sense of the white race must rule.
What is, folks, what is his, and Joe, I've got to ask you, what is his,
I think he hates himself for being white. I'm not sure.
Thanks for finishing that thought. I needed that help, because it always seems everything comes down to race with these people.
And that's what it is. People are easily moved by emotion if they feel they are being called out for not being politically correct. A lot of people don't have the backbone or the wherewithal in the mind to understand what a psychological operation or a psychological attack is. Being called a racist is one of the ways to make people change their attitudes and behaviors, even though they might not be doing anything wrong. If they don't understand that they are being attacked for the purpose of manipulating their mind, they will fall into the trap and think that they are racist. And it is just because these people, these talking heads say so. Now let's play this audio. This is Chris Matthews and Al Sharpton. Obama scandals prove racism and white supremacy in GOP.
But I'll tell you, Reverend, one piece of this thing that we always have to keep in mind as we deal with effective government, and those of us who believe in effective, positive government have to be the ones who make it work. The right wing loves it when it screws up because it makes their case. The liberals, the progressives, the reasonable people say, I need the government. I need it not just to protect me. I need it to do a lot of things I want done to keep this society okay. But the problem is there are people in this country, maybe 10%, I don't know what the number, maybe 20% on a bad day, who want this president to have an asterisk next to his name in the history books, that he really wasn't president. Like a guy in baseball that used drugs. Right. They want to be able to say, well, he really didn't have that batting average. He really wasn't the first African-American president. He really didn't do health care. He really didn't kill bin Laden. There's an asterisk. And they have been fighting for that to people like Donald Trump since day one. They can't stand the idea that he's president. And a piece of it is racism. Not that somebody in one racial group doesn't like somebody in another racial group. So what? It's the sense that the white race must rule. That's what racism is. And they can't stand the idea that a man who's not white is president. That is real. That sense of racial superiority and rule is in the hearts of some people in this country. Not all conservatives, not even all right-wingers. But it always comes through with this birthers crap and this other references and somehow trying to erase Obamacare, erase his record in history. And a big part of it is bought into by people like John Boehner, who's not a bad guy, but he knows the only way he can talk to the hard right is talk their language.
No doubt about it.
This guy shouldn't be president somehow. That he isn't president somehow. That he's an asterisk. Just like, Barry Bonds or somebody took drugs. Therefore, he didn't really have the batting average.
And it didn't really count. You take away everything and that because that's what white supremacy is. And that's not calling all of them that, but clearly there's an element there.
But I'll tell you, Reverend, one piece of this thing that we always have to keep in mind as we deal with effective government, and those of us who believe in effective, positive government have to be the ones who make it work. The right wing loves it when it screws up because it makes their case. The liberals, the progressives, the reasonable people say, I need the government. I need it not just to protect me. I need it to do a lot of things I want done to keep this society okay. But the problem is there are people in this country, maybe 10%, I don't know what the number, maybe 20% on a bad day, who want this president to have an asterisk next to his name in the history books. that he really wasn't president. You know, like a guy in baseball that used drugs.
Right.
They want to be able to say, well, he really didn't have that batting average. He really wasn't the first African-American president. He really didn't do health care. He really didn't kill bin Laden. There's an asterisk. And they have been fighting for that, the people like Donald Trump, since day one. They can't stand the idea that he's president. And a piece of it is racism. Not that somebody in one racial group doesn't like somebody in another racial group. So what? It's the sense that the white race must rule. That's what racism is. And they can't stand the idea that a man who's not white is president. That is real. That sense of racial superiority and rule is in the hearts of some people in this country. Not all conservatives, not even all right-wingers. But it always comes through with this birthers crap and this other references and somehow trying to erase Obamacare.
Deja vu there.
Some of that did loop. That was from Real Clear Politics, though, so I didn't expect the loop. But yes, the only reason we want Obama out of office is because of his skin color. It has nothing to do with being a dictator, tyrant, authoritarian. In Bush, we wanted him out because he was white, and it had nothing to do with his authoritarianism powers. And we just don't like any color of people.
Apparently not.
If you can't see through you, we don't like you.
But we don't even know who is sitting in the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, understand that. We've got no idea what his legal name is, if it's Barry Soetoro or Barack Hussein Obama. You've heard us say this many times before. We don't know. We've never seen his grades from Columbia. We don't even know if he attended Columbia. Have you ever seen a president who, classmates, former classmates, anyone in his past has come forward, where they've come forward and said, "Oh yeah, I remember he was
I know one
very
person
quiet,"
who did, and they weren't speaking to his favor.
Well,
they were saying that he was not around.
Exactly. And let's not forget just a couple of things, and I'll go through these very quickly. Obama just happened to know the 1960s far-left revolutionary William Ayers, whose father just happened to be Thomas Ayers, who just happened to be a close friend of Obama communist mentor Frank Marshall Davis, who just happened to work at the communist sympathizing Chicago Defender with none other than Vernon Jarrett, who just happened to later become the father-in-law of Iranian-born leftist hand-holding left brain of Barack Hussein Obama, Valerie Jarrett, who Obama chose to be his closest White House advisor, who just happened to have been CEO of Habitat Company, which just happened to manage public housing in Chicago, which, by the way, just happened to get millions of dollars from the Illinois state legislature, and which just happened not to properly maintain the housing, which eventually just happened to require demolition. We know Valerie Jarrett happened to work for the city of Chicago. She hired Michelle LaVaughn Robinson, later known as Michelle Obama. Of course, she worked, Robinson, Obama, she worked at the Sidney Austin law firm where former fugitive from the FBI, Bernadine Dorn, just happened to work as well. And of course, where Barack Obama just happened to get a summer job.
A lot of connections.
I can go on. But
right. We've been through the connections with his family, his mother, his father, the Ford Foundation, Frank Marshall Davis, the communist aspect, the Bill Ayers, the Bernadine Dorn, Weather Underground with Larry Grathwolt. This man is not just he does not have one a relationship with just one individual who has communistic ideology. He is surrounded and has been surrounded his whole life. He's been molded for this, and surrounded by people who are authoritarianistic, who are communist, who are Nazis in their own regards, just like George Bush 1 and 2, or this whole system of presidents is an illusion. They are nothing more than puppets on a string, as we like to say, and they will continue to play their part until they are taken out when we are. Moving on the headlines, some of the things we're going to get into today. Are Japanese banks on the verge of insolvency? This from Zero Hedge speaks a lot about what V talked about. The first show he was on, our first appearance on our show on January 11th, and every show since, stressing about Japan and how they are deflating their currency. Also, the Dairy Association lobby to the FDA wants to alter the definition of milk to include aspartame. We're going to tell you why that is dangerous. Also, Washington, D.C. considers a $250,000 insurance policy for gun owners. D.C. has some of the strictest gun control laws in the country, but the city council is considering a bill that would require prospective gun owners to purchase a $250,000 liability insurance policy. Also, in the wake of the stepping down or resignation, which the IRS, the commissioner of the IRS, I don't remember his name, but I later learned after the show last night he was going to be stepping down at the end of the month anyway. So him
I didn't
told
know that.
to resign doesn't really look as good, or look like action was taken when you find out he was going to be gone anyway. People should be in jail, as John Boehner said. When are people going to go to jail over this? And it's just incredible to see the lies and the scandals in the White House right now. But he's going to be naming Daniel Warfel to the he is the controller of the Office of Management and Budget as the new commissioner of the IRS. Also, go ahead.
Before you get into that, speaking of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service official in charge of the tax-exempt organizations at the time when that particular unit targeted Tea Party groups now runs the IRS responsible for healthcare legislation.
Yep, I printed that out somewhere here. I don't have it. I was looking for it here, but you have it.
Yeah, I do. And Sarah Hall Ingram served as commissioner of the office responsible for tax-exempt organizations from 2009 through 2012. Now, she has since left that part of the IRS and is now the director of the IRS's Affordable Care Act office. That was confirmed today. Her successor, Joseph Grant, is taking the fall for the various misdeeds at the scandal-plagued unit between, since 2010, essentially. This whole thing is crazy. You think that you can believe what you hear, that, for example, as you mentioned, I don't recall his name either, was Steve, I want to say Steve Martin, but that may not be correct, was told to pack his bags. Well, he was leaving anyway. I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors with these people. These people are all, I'm not sure if this would be much different regardless of who is in power, but the people in power have created such a very, very strong authoritarian, tyrannical situation. It's just incredible. It really is. And if you want something to read, scary to read, something that'll really wake you up, please go to HomelandSecurityUS.com and CanadaFreePress.com. In fact, go to both and spread the articles called Cloaked in Deception.
Misinformation.
That's
Deception. The title of the show tonight.
Right. You know what? I was looking. I had changed it from deception to misinformation. Read those two articles, or it's the same article. Just spread it, please, if you don't mind. It's a 500-word article. It appears on both websites, but please like those articles on the social networking. Click the like, and spread it around, because it tells you the links that these people are going to kill the messenger, or to make sure that no one talks about what's taking place, that shows like this won't survive. They're looking for leaks. We depend on people who talk out of school to us, whether it be regardless of what their position might be. I'm not going to. I'll just leave it at that. And yeah,
you started by saying, you want to read something scary, go to HomelandSecurityGuys.com and read the articles. Well, if you want to hear something scary, listen to this. This is Lawrence O'Donnell. And I want to play this now before we start getting into some more of this information from today. Lawrence O'Donnell, this is his take on the IRS and the Benghazi situation.
With the political media dizzy from a very bad bout of scandal fever, the president decided today that the only thing that can get that fever to go down would be to show the political media that he is taking charge of scandal management in the White House, even though there are no real scandals in Washington involving the White House in any way. First, the president dealt with the talking points scandal that is not a scandal. The White House released today 100 pages of emails that reveal the discussion that went on between the CIA and the State Department over exactly how to describe the attack in Benghazi, Libya, that killed our ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens. It is important to remember that it is scandalous. It really is scandalous that an American ambassador was killed. There was a scandalous failure within the State Department to provide adequate security to that ambassador before that ambassador was attacked. It is a scandal that the ambassador was left in such a vulnerable position in Benghazi. The Obama administration conducted its own investigation of that scandal late last year, and as a result, 4 State Department officials were relieved of their duties. The Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomatic Security, the Deputy Assistant Secretary responsible for embassy security, and an unnamed official within the Bureau of Near East Affairs, and a Deputy Assistant Secretary who had responsibility for North Africa. But Republicans in Washington and no one else anywhere in the world thinks that the scandal of Benghazi is what one person who had no involvement in it at all said about it on television one Sunday morning. Only in Washington could that be a scandal, and the 100 pages of emails released today show, as the Washington Post puts it, quote, the internal debate did not include political interference from the White House, according to the emails, which were provided to congressional intelligence committees several months ago. So Republicans have had these emails for several months. They have known that there was nothing incriminating of the White House in those emails, and only after Republicans began to recite certain sections of the emails and after ABC News misquoted those emails, only then did the president decide it was time to make the emails public. The Benghazi talking points scandal should evaporate now. It should just disappear. And there is a slight chance that it just might, because all of Washington now believes, Democrats and Republicans, that they have a real scandal in what the Internal Revenue Service did. And today, the president tried to show that he was taking charge of that one, too.
I just finished speaking with Secretary Lew and senior officials at the Treasury Department to discuss the investigation into IRS personnel who improperly screened conservative groups applying for tax-exempt status. It's inexcusable, and Americans are right to be angry about it, and I am angry about it. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in any agency, but especially in the IRS. So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to hold the responsible parties accountable. Today, Secretary Lew took the first step by requesting and accepting the resignation of the acting commissioner of the IRS. Because given the controversy surrounding this audit, it's important to institute new leadership that can help restore confidence going forward. Second, we're going to put in place new safeguards to make sure this kind of behavior cannot happen again. Third, we will work with Congress as it performs its oversight role. And our administration has to make sure that we are working hand in hand with Congress to get this thing fixed. Congress, Democrats and Republicans, owe it to the American people to treat that authority with the responsibility it deserves and in a way that doesn't smack of politics or partisan agendas. Because I think one thing that you've seen is across the board, everybody believes what happened as reported in the IG report is an outrage.
Yeah, everybody. Everybody but me. I do not believe what the IRS was reported to have been doing is an outrage. I believe that the IRS agents in this case did nothing wrong. Let me say it again. You won't hear it anywhere else. The IRS agents did nothing wrong. They were simply trying to enforce the law as the IRS has understood it since 1959. I've been telling you all week that the IRS is wrong about their interpretation of the law, an interpretation that they introduced in 1959, but it is not the fault of anyone working in the IRS today. It is now very clear that what I've been saying about this is getting through to the White House, and we'll have more of.
Yeah, nothing to see here, nobody's fault, nothing wrong, no scandal, according to Lawrence O'Donnell. Thank you for clearing that up. We can all take our balls and go home.
Yeah, that's it. He said it, so it must be accurate. We're done. That's over.
Don't worry.
Nothing more to talk about.
Don't worry about the emails that he spoke of that were released that exclude critical emails between the administration officials that were sent during the first 2 days after the deadly attack that killed 4 Americans last September. There were 100 pages of partially redacted emails that were released that also conclude with a dismissive message from the CIA chief, David Petraeus. Frankly, I just as soon not use this. Petraeus said about the heavily edited 4-sentence talking points that the White House used to downplay al-Qaeda's role in the September 11th attack on the poorly protected diplomatic compound. Well, at least they're not calling it an embassy or a consulate. This release is long overdue, but there are relevant documents the administration has still refused to produce. That in a statement from Brendan Buck, press secretary to the House Majority Leader John Boehner. We hope, however, that this limited release of documents is a sign of more cooperation to come, he added. The 2-day gap. The first released email was sent 67 hours after the attack begun. Plus, the Petraeus comment undermines the White House's explanation for the rewrite. Officials, including Jay Carney, the White House spokesman, say CIA officials, not White House and State Department officials, rewrote a quick reaction CIA report that had attributed the attack to an al-Qaeda affiliate. Even the smallest amount of scrutiny shows the emails don't support their explanation, said in a May 15th tweet from Buck. The White House's explanation appears nowhere in the actual documents, nowhere, not even a hint of it, Buck added. After the attack, White House officials used the edited talking points to bolster repeated claims that the organized attack was an unpredictable, spontaneous, violent riot by Libyans who were angry about a California-made YouTube trailer of a video. The little-known video was sharply critical of Muhammad, the central prophet of Islam, Clinton during the crisis, which began only 8 weeks before the 2012 election, who was the Secretary of State. GOP legislators continue to plan their investigation into the September cover-up of al-Qaeda's role and the current cover-ups of the White House's role in rewriting the CIA report. Now, we have a lot of problems here. This 2 days of a 2-day gap in the email goes to the 18 and a half hours where Barack Obama was absent at the time of the Benghazi attack, or at least we do not have an account of where he was, what he was doing, or if he was even available.
Missing in action is what we would like to call him, or is what I've said that he was during that time period. And I think, honestly, Joe, I think that that is the elephant in the room with respect to the White House aspect. Well, that's kind of like one of two elephants in the room. If we accept the premise that we were involved in a very sophisticated, very vast gun-running, weapons-running operation to the anti-Assad Syrian rebels and elsewhere. Arms flowing into Turkey, into Jordan, to Hezbollah, as well as into Syria. I think if we accept that, then the other, or the more prescient elephant in the room, is where exactly was Obama? Who was he with? What was he doing? Who was he doing it with? Where wasn't he? And I think we need a step blow-by-blow answer to that, a very, very detailed answer to that.
Some of those answers we might not want too much detail on.
Well, yeah. If folks, those people who know, and I know our audience is perhaps one of the best educated audiences in talk radio history. If you know where we're headed with this, and I think some of you do, Joe is probably very accurate. That statement is extremely accurate. Look at the White House logs, both 48 hours before and 48 hours after the attacks. Look at the records of the Secret Service as well. It would be a very incredible, by the very definition of that word, an incredible trip, I believe, to know with certainty what he was doing and who he was doing it with. Obviously, we know he went to Las Vegas the following day, but that's not the only issue. The issue is that time period during which the fighting was taking place. And after his 5 o'clock meeting in the Oval Office, I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to go any further into that. But if the other thing too, this is off the script a tad, Joe. I've been getting information that I just don't. It's almost as if the globalist elite are done with Obama. And think about that statement, folks. Okay, you've got a puppeteer, and when the puppeteer develops their own muscles and begins to do certain things, especially with a Muslim Brotherhood that may not fit within the script, when you have an actor that goes off script, sometimes you've got to reel that actor in, and if you can't reel that actor in, you've got to fire the actor.
Okay, I have a few questions. Number one, do you really think that Obama has varied from the plan of the globalists in any way? And if so, which way?
Well, I think perhaps he has. I would say that the script variance would lie within the intensity in which he is using the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm sorry, the intensity is the wrong word. The overtness that he is adhering, the overtness, the lack of, or the transparency of the agenda. I think he doesn't care.
Well, as far as the Muslim Brotherhood, I would think the opposite. I would say Obama is the perfect man to do what he has already done, which is start these revolutions and overthrowing of nations in the Middle East that surround Israel. He is stirring up the pot in so many countries, and I don't mean to use that term in a bad way, because what he's doing is murder. What he is doing is treason. What he is doing is traitorous. And through drones, through special forces, and other means, NATO and their UN and those arms of agencies that are a part of this stuff, whether on the record or the black agencies off the record, they're killing hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East and across North Africa and getting away with it. Not only that, they're overthrowing leaders. They're taking over countries and giving primarily secular countries to extreme jihadists. Now, could George Bush get away with that?
No, and I, you know what, I think you're right to a large extent. Let me just, I'll stipulate to that, and I'll even say at this point that perhaps I was not 100% correct with that. What I see, however, is a man who is, and this was pointed out to me by a source, very close source of mine. Look at the man, look at the golf games, look at the lavish vacations, look at him rub the faces of all Americans into his lifestyle, into their lifestyle, the Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake type of attitude. That doesn't bode well. And there's a level of anger and animosity that builds by Americans and by people throughout the world as well, especially the countries that are facing the austerity measures. But I suppose what I'm saying is, with this, there's two aspects to his lavish lifestyle. One is he's overtly enjoying, for example, the position and the perks that it offers a little bit too much, a little bit too freely, and a little bit too overtly. But the second part of it is, could it be, and I'm going to throw this out there to listeners, could it be that he knows something that I don't look? The last thing I want is the Secret Service knocking on my door. That doesn't mean I'm afraid of talking about things like this, but I do have my concerns because there are people out there.
Let me say this.
You see where I'm going with this, though?
I thought the same thing with Bush. With what he did with the Patriot Act, especially during his second term, all the things that came out about 9/11, the 9/11 hearings, the connections to the families of the Saudi royalty that Bush had, I thought he was going to be removed one way or another. And there is chatter, talk, people wondering, will there be impeachment? Will there be another means by which Obama is removed as president? And this leads to my second question. Well, is Joe Biden going to be left in charge?
Well, no, I see. No, I can't see that. I'm wondering if in this case, the questionable eligibility might come into play. Now, folks, I don't know if you've seen it or not, the Mike Zullo affidavit that was signed back at the end of last year is now making its rounds on the internet again, and it's calling into question Obama's eligibility. And of course, Chris Matthews thinks that's ridiculous and that's racist as well as others. But what I'm seeing is a man who is acting as if he knows something that perhaps I don't even know how to describe it, except to say that maybe he's golfing more than his predecessor, exponentially more. He's taking these lavish vacations because he knows something.
I don't know, but Bush stopped playing golf, but he still spent lots of time at Camp David, where lots of time to vacation, just much closer to home and more discreet.
But I also think that's a working vacation. I'm not defending Bush at all, but I think Camp David's a lot different than consistently playing golf.
But to see Obama take a vacation that costs the taxpayers $100 million, 6-7 times a year, that's very excessive. When people are struggling to eat in this nation, we're sending hundreds of millions of dollars to Al Qaeda across the world. When people are struggling to get clothes for their children for school, to food, to medical care for themselves or their families, you have a president throwing money at the people allegedly responsible for 9/11 1 and 2, to the point it is disgusting. Not only that, spending more money than all presidents before him combined. Not only that, also setting up the councils he has set up, the Council of Governors, the Rural Council, the Department of Homeland Security partnerships, the NDAA, all of these pieces of legislation, these groups of people that he has put together, put in place. He has not filled one promise he said he was going to from his 2008 campaign. I think other than to shut down the coal power plants, I think that was the one thing he did say before the election that he made good on.
He did keep that. Yeah.
But, I mean, we are, and to go back to Chris Matthews, to what he was saying, I have the speech right in front of me here. He says, there are these right-wing crazies that love when Obama screws up because it helps make their case. Well, yeah, when Obama is caught in a lie, when he's caught in a scandal, it helps make the case that the government is corrupt at the core. It is evil at the core. This isn't just about Obama. It's about the whole government. And there are good people in the government, but there's something wrong because we're not seeing too much of their fruits. We're not hearing too much from them. And as Matthews goes on to say, the liberals, the progressives, the reasonable people, the I need government, I need it not just to protect me, I need it to do lots of things done to keep the society okay. He goes on to say, but the problem is there are people in this country, maybe 10%, he says maybe 20% on a bad day, who want the president to have an asterisk next to his name in the history books. Well, he already does. He's the first African-American president ever in the history of the United States. So he will have a special little asterisk next to his name. And that's not a bad thing.
Well,
it wouldn't be a bad thing if it wasn't obtained through fraud, as many believe it has been, and evidence has shown that to be the case. But even that aside, they go on here, Matthews goes on here to say, and Obama and him and people in the media like him have been fighting people like Donald Trump, who say that the right-wing crazies can't stand the idea that he is president. And a piece of that is racism. Not that somebody in one racial group doesn't like somebody in another racial group. It's the sense that the white race must rule. That's what racism is. And they can't stand the idea that a man who is not white is president. That is real. And I made the point in the chat room that, it's convenient that they can call racism every time there is a scandal that surrounds Obama. But at the same time, think of this. Any kind of scandals or critics of Janet Napolitano, they can't play the race card, but they can play you're homophobic, you're anti-women in places of power. It seems like people are in these positions of power, and you're muted, from the head of the DHS to the head of the FDA to the head of the Attorney General's office to all the people that are from the Muslim Brotherhood that are in our government. It's set up in a way to where they can do this. No matter who you criticize, they are either, they are diverse in some way, either being homosexual or African American or a woman, something different than what the average status quo of leadership in the United States used to be. And we all know the leadership in the United States used to just be a bunch of old white guys. To say it plainly, I mean, that's how it has been. And yeah, I believe that's a problem. There should be diversity in all walks of life, including government. But when they use that diversity, when they push for the diversity to make sure it's fair and equal, but then use it as an excuse to go after people and marginalize people, when I'm sure there is people that in America who don't like Obama as president or don't like him period because he is black. Yeah, there's still those racist people around.
Well, I'm
But let
sure
me tell
it
you
exists.
something.
Yeah,
The
I'm sure that exists. Yeah.
majority of the people that Chris Matthews and the left progressive communist media calls right-wing conspiracy theorists, right-wing conservatives, 95% of those, I'd say at least, don't care about the race. They would be, it just, Obama is president at a time when people are waking up. And why are they waking up? Because they see their money buying less. They see their savings draining. They see their bills, expenses going up. Now they're going to start to see how it feels to have to purchase a product from the government or else pay a penalty.
Well, all right.
And
Yeah,
I know we kind of were all over
you
the
said
place.
you said a mouthful there, but I just kind of want to go back and revisit Obama's place right now. What I was intimating with respect to perhaps Obama not, perhaps they're done with Obama. I mean, to me, the Illuminati, the people who run, the string pullers, the people who really have the power. You know, consider if, and once again, I'm saying this hypothetically. Consider if Obama is taken out by whatever means. Okay, maybe it could be blamed on. I mean, think if that happened. Remember when Reagan was there was an attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan. Remember that. Remember history. Can you imagine the backlash? The of Chris Matthews going absolutely crazy and saying it's the Patriot parties, it's the Tea Party groups, the Constitutionalists. Can you imagine the backlash how that would occur? The outrage against those who are reportedly or allegedly responsible, the Patriots, the Republicans, Americans, so on. There would be total and absolute polarization in this country. And how many people would then support martial law, which would be supported by many as the only logical response or retaliation? And of course, you know that comes with the FEMA camps and that type of thing. It makes you wonder when you start to look at the various parts of this. Could there be something in the works like this? And certainly and believe me, I certainly do not want to see anything happen to Obama. Because the last thing I'd want to see is him elevated to martyr status.
I would say I want to, if any kind of action is taken against Obama or any other member
legal
in the in the political spectrum, that it would be following the law of the land, the laws that they don't follow. We arrest them. We present the evidence that is against them to a jury of their peers, and we let the jury decide their innocence or guilt, and the judge handle their sentencing afterwards. Anything else would be basically doing what they do, and we cannot be on that side. We have to be on the side of good. We have to be on the side of righteousness, of truth. And
that's right.
We, as people say, we can never fire the first shot. We can never take any kind of offensive action that is, especially a violent action. Now, you can take a offensive stance on issues as like abortion and homosexual marriage in churches and things of that nature. But anybody, and this, I'm bringing this back to the march in D.C. that is planned for July 4th.
I think we need to talk about this.
And I want to thank, I don't have Facebook up now. I think it was Justin. He asked me if I would bring this up today. We are seeing this, and go back a couple weeks to Nathan Leal being on our show, talking about his dreams he had, where the Patriots were fighting the Department of Homeland Security. In his dream, he talked about it, how it was very emotional, how he was pleading with these people in the parking lot of a motel. This was the third dream. That people were marching, these people he perceived were patriots, were marching to go to battle against the government. And he was pleading with them, saying, this is not the right thing to do. Don't do it. Well, right after that, a couple days after that, there was this talk of a march, a rally, an armed march on Washington, D.C. Not an open carry protest like you would see, like we've seen here, like we've attended here.
Right.
This is different. I mean, an open carry protest are protests where people gather together in states that have open carry laws, which means you don't need a license to carry a gun openly. DC is not one of those places.
No, anything but, by the way.
And I don't want to talk bad about the effort, because things do need to be done. People do need to be taking action. But what good are we if we're not taking the correct action? We are going to be feeding into their hands, right into their agenda. And we were talking with a listener, friend of the show the other day about this, and all it takes is one crazy person. And we know that the government puts infiltrators and agitators and instigators in these crowds. It's documented and on tape at the G7 summit at one time. In protest in Toronto, they did this and were caught. So there's no doubt in my mind that if they go along with a armed march on DC, there will be, at the very least, an agitator, an instigator who fires a shot. It might be a blank, but will it matter? Just like we look.
Can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine? This frightens me. It does. It concerns me. It worries me. You've got this man who is, if you've seen the shirts, for example, that he is, I don't know, promoting, I suppose, the anti-authoritarian shirts. That's fine. But when you mix that with this very severe sentiment, I just wonder, in a way, sometimes. I understand that we have a right to bear arms. I understand that we have a right to open carry under the Second Amendment. I do understand all of that. But is this not
dangerous?
Yeah, dangerous.
At some level, it's very careless. Also, I mean, you are not just advocating and taking action on your own. You are dragging people along with you who might not know better, who look up to people. I think there's Adam Koshek who's doing this, who's leading this.
Kokesh.
Okay.
Kokesh.
He's a Marine. He was also in a protest 2 years ago where he was dancing at the Jefferson Memorial or the Lincoln Memorial.
Oh, was that him?
He was dancing and he was picked up by his neck and body slammed by a police officer. So
he already has this attitude.
Oh,
I didn't realize that was him.
No, okay. And he has a right to have an attitude the way he does. A veteran who was treated as basically a criminal, and even furthermore, for just dancing silently, not even making noise. They were quiet, dancing at the whatever memorial in Washington they did, got him arrested. And I don't want to say that, we shouldn't take action, sit back and do nothing, but there are much better ways to go about this. I mean, have a march, have a huge rally, leave the guns at home, or stay in a state where you can carry openly. Don't put people in a situation where they're going to be breaking the law, because when you have a group of followers who want to do the right thing, who think they're doing the right thing, and you're leading them down an ambush trail, pretty much.
That's the problem I've got. Look, I believe a million armed man march on Washington, if they could do it successfully, would send a very strong message to Washington. Look, I'm not afraid of a fight. The fight brought to me, okay? I'm afraid of stupidity because stupid people will get you killed. And I'm just afraid that this is not a place or an event I would personally like to be involved in. I would like to see 1 million men armed march on Washington. When I say armed, I mean within the confines of, or within the spirit, I should say, of the Second Amendment. I don't want to sound like I'm stumbling over myself or contradicting myself. I believe that we as Americans have a right to bear arms anywhere in the United States of America.
I'll tell you how I'd get behind this. If
How would
the
you?
military, if the leaders in the military
Okay.
would lead it, and the military would participate in it,
Okay.
then we'd be talking.
Okay. Or the police, even
Correct.
state police contingents, or the military, even better. Yeah, that's fine. But when you've got people out there and you don't know who you are, and we've seen, look, we've seen these people, these government agents who infiltrate these groups and will cause the trouble. What better? I mean, for crying out loud, what better way to expedite the confiscation of weapons by having something go terribly wrong in that event? Yeah. Man, that's wow.
I just want to read a little section here. This book that Brother Marcus sent me. It's called "Strong in the Day of Battle." It talks about, it says, and so conflict is one of the great features of this time. It will come in any kind of way, most peculiarly in the way which we do not expect and which we do not desire. We do not expect the enemy to choose out that particular trial that we would bear best. If we do, we have mistaken his nature. I speak out of my own heart. How true is it that we are blind and forgetful and taken off our guard again and again because we regard incidents and circumstances as things in themselves, and fail to realize that the whole scene, as it is now set, is one of a great, complicated campaign, and we are soldiers in the ranks. It goes on to say, endure hardship. The next note that is sounded so much in this letter is that of suffering. If you go through the second letter to Timothy, there is no cloaking of the fact, no attempt on Paul's part to make light of his own experiences or in some cheap optimism to encourage Timothy. On the contrary, it is again and again to bear in mind the sufferings of his great predecessor and himself to be prepared to suffer, as it is all part of the campaign. Some natures can enjoy a good ding-dong fight, and there is an appeal even in the word conflict when it is looked upon in certain aspects. Get down and pray and deal with the thing, and you may find some satisfaction in feeling you have given the enemy a bad time. Well, that may be part of the battle, but so often our fighting is suffering, and a cause of enduring the hardness of a long drawn-out, and to us very mysterious campaign. You cannot expect one who is himself at the head of his forces to take us into his confidence as to the whole of the thing that he is doing, or even perhaps as to our little part in it. There is a note that you hear so often in this letter. It is a sad one, for it is in the falling away, the turning aside of men. Of course, it is all the result of the conflict. There is a conflict for all. At least a conflict faces all. But you can choose the conflict. You can seek to be a good soldier. That means suffering. Or you can turn from the conflict. That means what you find again and again in this letter. Those who turned aside, those who oppose themselves. All the time the solemn appeals that the apostles make to Timothy are to hold on, to stir up into a flame that gift which is in him. And it goes on to talk about, this book goes, I'm not going to read any more from here.
Wow. But that's pretty powerful.
Talks about whose battle this is. the battle which is not yours. And it cites a Bible verse, 2 Corinthians 20, verses 1 through 27. And it goes on to say, while it is true that in the New Testament the Lord's servants are designated soldiers, and while it is also true that there are battles to be fought, there is one big, fundamental, and all-inclusive battle in which the Lord's people have no part whatsoever. To engage in it is to write over all the work of our Lord Jesus Christ and his cross. Right. Failure to write it off as something which does not hold good. There is a battle in which you and I have no fighting place. It is the Lord's battle, not ours. It is over recognition and settlement of the fact that most of the trouble arises in the experience of multitudes of the Lord's people. There has been a battle which includes all other battles and has been fought by the Lord himself for us, and it is important to know both fact and what that battle was. A victory to be appointed by praising faith.
Very important information, very heavy information. You've got to really get into that to really understand the level of importance that you just read. I think that's required. That really should be required reading. It does speak to the battle in which we face here and in the future, the anticipated battle, the battle that we're in right now. Before the break, I just want to touch on this real quick, Joe, to tell you, not a big deal, at least not a big deal for most people. I happened to see a photograph of a video, a still image from a video of a Marine corporal holding an umbrella for Obama during a press conference today at the White House. Now, you might think, okay, this is really... Of all the things to really complain about, are you kidding me? You're gonna pick that as something to talk about. Well, here's what my problem is: the United States has been built on a very specific set of ceremony, and for a Marine in dress uniform to actually hold the umbrella for Obama speaks to a situation of royalty as opposed to a civil servant. Once you look at it in that fashion, I think you'll understand the significance and how our military is being used. We remember the comments during the Clinton administration, the disdain the Clintons had for the U.S. military. This goes beyond disdain. This actually is it's against the rules, and it is a very very telling symbolic gesture by Obama. I don't want look. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This is worth 10,000. You've got to really look beyond what your eyes see. Look beyond what your eyes see and look at or listen to what your brain is telling you with regard to this photograph. Folks, you're listening to the Thursday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is, of course, a live broadcast. Today is the 16th day of May 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studios, Joe Hagmann, the co-host. We are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We'll be right back after these messages. Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilita Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
If you love pineapple as much as I do, I've got some great news for you. You're going to love this offer from Freeze Dry Guy. For the month of May, Freeze Dry Guy is offering the finest quality freeze-dried pineapple, a case of 6 number 10 cans yielding 114 servings at a special introductory price. First quality freeze-dried pineapple grown and packed with nothing added. This healthy treat works wonders with salad, is great for snacking, hiking, hunting, camping, and for adding to your food storage program. And please note that Freeze Dry Guy's foods will store on your shelf for decades. Order now and get free shipping to your front door within the lower 48 states. This special introductory price is good until May 31st. For more information and a free complete product list, go to freezedryguy.com or phone 866-404-3663. freezedryguy.com 866-404-3663.
Well, get ready for another round of Transpacific Partnership negotiations, the 17th round to be exact. And still very little information about this massive international collaboration is actually known. Government officials in 12 countries are meeting with the representatives from over 600 businesses to discuss international free trade. Talks are set to end in October, with individual governments voting on the agreement shortly after. If passed, it would be the biggest trade agreement in history. But something this big isn't without its fair share of critics. Groups have criticized the secrecy of these negotiations, the breadth of what the TPP actually covers, and the possibility of it overriding individual country laws, and so much more. One of those critics is Lori Wallish. She's the director of a Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. Thank you so much for joining me. So let's start off by talking about this schedule that they have in Lima and the 17th round of negotiations. It's still very unclear what they were doing. They put out a schedule giving us some kind of idea of what's going on. It involves lots of activities for stakeholders. But what really do we know about what's going on there aside from this little very vague release?
Well, unfortunately, the schedule is typically the same, whatever they put on paper. Representatives from 11 countries meet together behind closed doors. In the lobbies and in meetings before and after are corporate representatives trying to influence the talks. The meetings and negotiations are trying to set up a set of binding international rules that each of the countries would have to conform all of their domestic laws to. Most of it has nothing to do with trade. Rather, all of these negotiators are sitting down, despite the fact that their parliaments or congresses are doing business as normal, and rewriting huge parts of their domestic law. So, for instance, one of the things I know they're talking about this round of negotiations is the 17th time in 3 years that they've gotten together, and before that was a whole year under Bush. So since 2008, this dance has been going on in the dark. This time they're talking about visas for workers. Countries in this involved in Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia. Visas for workers to come here and work. And you would say, isn't Congress having a discussion right now about immigration? Why are they having a similar discussion behind closed doors between a few countries? Very good question. Lots of issues like that are in the TPP. Financial deregulation, requiring us to import food that doesn't meet our standards, limits on internet freedom, and, very scary, a proposal to set up tribunals outside our court system where foreign corporations could directly sue our governments and grab our tax dollars right out of the Treasury.
That's a very interesting point, and I think you did a really good job kind of wrapping up all the dangers that critics have of this behind-the-doors negotiations. One of the aspects that really caught my attention while I was researching this is that negotiators within the U.S. are lobbying for the fact that they don't want Congress to be able to debate it. They want simply a yes or a no answer. It's called fast-tracking. Talk about the dangers of fast-tracking.
So fast-track is a very arcane procedure used only 16 times since it was cooked up by, shocker, Richard Nixon. So it was first in 1974 when trade agreements really only covered real trade stuff like border taxes, tariffs. came up with this procedure, and the idea was to speed through Congress with no amendments, limited debate, tariff cuts. Well, now here comes a trade negotiation. It's really like a misbranding, right? The TPP is much bigger than trade. And the idea that is now being kicked around by some of the really big businesses and President Obama is to get this arcane procedure, and this is how it works. The executive branch gets to negotiate and sign an agreement without Congress actually getting to vote first. It then gets to write legislation changing all of our domestic laws to meet the agreement it negotiated and signed without Congress. It then gets to send it to Congress, and the normal committee procedure is forbidden. No review, no amendments in committee. And then it goes to the floor, 45 days, automatic yes or no votes. No amendments, 20 hours of debate, House, Senate. It's like a legislative luge run. You can put any terrible thing, and sheer force of gravity takes it right through Congress and into our lives. Very dangerous. You don't need this, obviously, to pass an agreement that the public would like. You only need this to shove through Congress something that is bad for the country. And so this is the process that got us into the World Trade Organization, that got us into NAFTA. But we've had hundreds of decent trade agreements that didn't use this. So a very dangerous process, but it only can go into place if Congress agrees. So we all have the ability, by telling our members of Congress, they have constitutional exclusive authority over trade, and we better tell them they need to stick to their authority, not give it away. We expect them to work for us, and that starts with not giving away their power to make sure we have good trade agreements.
Very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. Lori Wallace, Director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to direct your attention to one of our sponsors, that is Granland Firearms of British Columbia. Great people. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the link to Granland Firearms. It's on the right-hand side, right-hand column. There you'll find any type of survival gear, hunting equipment. They've got a current index, current gun stock list, of course. They've got a number of other things, t-shirts and hats. Great stuff. Good, solid family people, good salt of the earth people. That's Granland Firearms. GranlandFirearms.com. GranlandFirearms.com. If you can't get up to British Columbia physically, if, for example, you live in Florida, you can, by the way, purchase a firearm through a federal firearms licensed dealer from them. It's worked in the past without problem. You certainly can do that legally and without any trouble. So certainly visit GranlandFirearms.com, pay them a visit virtually, check out their website, check out their list of stock, and tell them Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you. Sign their guest book while you're there.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Thursday, May 16th, 2013. I am your co-host, Joe Hagmann, along with me, Doug Hagmann, my co-host. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. During the break, you heard an audio from Russia Today on the Transpacific Partnership. Now, to reiterate a little bit of what was said, for the 17th time, government officials from 12 countries are set to meet to discuss an international free trade agreement known as the Transpacific Partnership. The TPP negotiations have been kept under wraps, and much of the issues discussed are unknown to the public. If the agreement is passed, it will become one of the biggest global treaties in history. Many critics of the TPP feel that the business agreement could affect the sovereignty of each nation involved. What you heard in that video was the explanation of how the Trans-Pacific Partnership can rewrite U.S. domestic policy and put us underneath international law. This should come as no surprise, as we've been talking about treaties, from economic treaties to secret meetings like the Bilderberg meetings and Trilateral Commission meetings. But this is different. This is like the NAFTA agreement, only with the nations of the Pacific, like China, India, taking away more of our, or what is left, if anything, is left of our manufacturing and industrial sectors, and taking sovereignty away from the United States over our own resources, over our own exports, imports, and even our money. It is globalism at work. Globalism is emerging, and we are stuck in the middle, watching like a deer in the headlights, as there is not much we can do to stop a global satanic force moving against us, aside from being prepared and guarded, shielded, protected spiritually.
Exactly, and I've got some more to say on this, because I think to put this in context, we have to look back. But before I do, I want to say hello to Opal out of Dallas, Texas. Glad you're okay after the storms. She's listening from Dallas, Texas. Want to welcome those joining us for the second hour of tonight's program. But to speak to what you were talking about, Joe, when Clinton, and folks, we have to go back, and it's necessary to reconstruct a little bit of this. Think back of the New World Order comments by George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, and others, okay? But when Clinton signed off on the North American Free Trade Agreement and the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs in 1993, that's the NAFTA and GATT that we talked about. He literally slashed the economic throat of the United States. We've been hemorrhaging jobs to foreign nations like communist China ever since. And, until 1993, the U.S. really was the world's economic king. Our people enjoyed the highest standard of living. We had manufacturing. It started to wane, but for the most part, NAFTA and GATT changed all that by removing all trade protections that ensured our prosperity. Compared to the United States, for example, labor costs in China, Indonesia, and similar nations are much lower than what U.S. workers earned. But NAFTA and GATT allowed our corporations and the U.S. entrepreneurs to move their manufacturing technology overseas. And what they do, they took advantage of the reduced cost of doing business over there. They avoid our former trade protections. It was you could hear that whooshing sound, I think, as Ross Perot had referenced. But what could be better for a typical American manufacturer? You avoid payroll taxes. You don't have to pay workers' compensation. You don't have to worry about environmental regulations or hurdles. Let them pollute. Go over to China and pollute. How come no one's complaining about that? You no longer have to deal with unions and provide employee benefits, health insurance, retirement plans, and so on. You've got the stranglehold over here and the free-for-all over there. I suppose that's the best way to describe it. But the long-term effect of what we're going to be seeing here is we're going to find that this was the precursor for this one world government. In the very fine selection from RT that Joe had found, uploaded, and played, I think, really explains it well. I think if you listen to that, we are in the end game, the throes of the end game scenario right now. Currently, we're going to be the United States is essentially castrated from all industrial manufacturing base. And remember what V said about that? I think he made it pretty clear, and so did Steve Quayle and others, that we don't make anything. We don't. What do we make? We make nothing.
Money. We print money.
You're muted there.
He really said that.
You're muted.
He said that our two main exports was trash and pornography.
How true is that? And how sad is that? Pornography and trash. One and the same, actually.
Well, trash is much better than the latter, I would say.
Well, it's the NAFTA GATT agreements are going to be responsible or are responsible for the killing of the American way of life and slashing our standard of living. And if you remember this, folks, this is a bipartisan effort. NAFTA and GATT. This is a bipartisan initiative. This is not a Republican-Democrat issue. If I recall correctly, and I'm not sure that I do, listeners, you could take me to task if this is incorrect, but I'm fairly certain that we had a lot of right-wing talk show hosts, including Rush Limbaugh, saying, hey, GATT, NAFTA, that's good for America. It's not going to hurt this country. If that's the case, I think that hopefully by now he would be rethinking his position. But the deregulation, for example, what has happened once the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed, the deregulation, it's incredible. But let me throw out a question to you and to the listeners, because we have a listener that sent in a question. Let me make sure I can find it here. It was actually a series of 4 questions. In the subject line basically was one word, and that was why. Now, I'll just use his first name as Keith. He had written to us, and listeners, you could take a listen to these questions, these 4 questions, and Joe, you too, and weigh in on these. He writes, he says, I enjoy your show, but I don't get a few things. If the financial world is going to collapse, then why? Number one, why would airlines order millions of dollars of new planes? Number 2, why would our local hospital build millions of dollars of expansion? 3, why would sports teams pay a pitcher $175 million for the next 7 seasons? And 4, why would companies expand new products and product development? And he writes a couple, I think 2 sentences here. He says, I mean, these people must have some financial skills and brains, so they're clueless or inept, or they don't believe things are going the way that you convey. I agree the world is going down the tubes, but I just don't get it. What do you have to say to that? Now, if V was on, for example, he would have some pretty strong statements on this, but look, I do believe that there is this normalcy bias. I mean, I'll address this. I think that there's this normalcy bias because what we talked about segues right into this. You don't believe, because we are in uncharted waters, that the United States is going to go down the tubes monetarily. You don't believe, for example, that the dollar will lose its status as the reserve currency. You don't believe that we could face the devaluation and debasement of our currency to the effect that, or to the extent that we will. So, in many respects, whether it be a sports team or whatever, I mean, people are still spending money like there's no tomorrow, without realizing that this money is a fiat currency backed by nothing. So, I mean, to answer the questions, I think that there are individual answers to each individual question, but I do believe the overlay to all of this is the lack of belief that the system is going to collapse. And I think that the Keynesian or Keynesian economics that is fueling the country right now, I really believe they're adherent to this philosophy that it can go on forever as long as the money can be printed and the digits can be added. It's going to be just fine.
It's not going to collapse. It's just going to fold neatly in place. At least that's what I've been told by talking heads on the news.
Yeah, and I've read on different financial forums where, oh, this is going to be great. Go ahead and kill the dollar, for example, because therefore you would be killing the Federal Reserve. And we know how bad the Federal Reserve is. But what people fail to understand is it's not going to rise back up in the fashion, it's not going to be recreated with a gold or silver-backed currency. And in the process of it crashing, it's going to take down countries with it. And the rebuilding of it is going to be it's not going to happen the way people think it's going to happen. It's going to end up in a one world currency system that's going to have, and I think V might have alluded to this because of, as a result of my question of it, I think it's going to have its oversight out of the city of London City, that 10 block radius in London, that will oversee the new world currency, where the seat of world power is. And you're going to see a Camelot. You're going to see this, according to the Illuminati plans, you're going to see a reborn British Empire, where the sun never sets.
Let's go back to Japan. Are Japanese banks on the verge of insolvency? This from Zero Hedge. I started to get into this earlier. We have long discussed the problem that the Japanese government faces if interest rates in the troubled nation rise. Cost of debt financing will swamp revenues in a vicious circle. But now it seems there is another, just as vicious problem that the BOJ is set to discuss, according to Nikkei.
By the way, that's the Bank of Japan, and I always confuse that with BOJ. I always confuse with never mind. But it's the Bank of Japan.
The inability of the BOJ to control Japanese interest rates, the rates are spiking unprecedentedly day after day, has put the banking system in a lot of trouble. As Zero Hedge recently explained, the banks appeared to initially hedge their huge positions, but now appear to recognize that first out wins and are reducing exposure overall. The reason is simple. As the IMF explains via the Bank of Japan, according to the Bank of Japan estimates, a 100 BP rise in market yields would lead to mark-to-market losses of 20% of Tier 1 capital for regional banks and 10% of the major banks.
Well, let me interject
some
here.
Some of that went over my head.
Okay, folks, you've got to understand mark-to-market and some economic principles. And I really would recommend, if you look up Ann Barnhart, she's got a 2.5-hour seminar on YouTube, on the internet, Ann Barnhart, barnhart.biz, to watch that basic economic class. I think it's like 8 segments. It's Ann Barnhart. She explains what mark-to-market is. She explains why. All the basic economic terms that you hear that you might not be that familiar with. She explains all of this. And I want to interject that because just as you have a problem, and I have a problem with understanding all these weird, the hypothecation, rehypothecation. What in the world does this mean? Well, it's just lending money is what it means. It's just a fancy word for, your bank gets in $1,000. Well, they can lend out $40,000 off of that $1,000. That's the hypothecation, rehypothecation, if you will. So she does a great job in explaining that. I just want to interject that in there because when you mention stuff like mark-to-market, people like you and I, we're just normal people. We don't get this, and we don't gain anything by promoting, obviously, her videos. But it explains nicely. So go ahead and continue.
Okay. Bottom line of this article is macro financial risk factors from the Japan market exposures. Their risks reflect possible impact on public debt, sustainability, changes in yields, and related effects on investor confidence. Also, the increased role of the private financial sector in covering government borrowing needs, the prospect that ongoing demographic shifts will reduce private savings, and growing household interest in investing abroad. It goes on to say that the interest rate risk sensitivity is especially prevalent in regional banks and insurance companies. Basically, the bottom line is the public pension scheme, as well as the Japan Post and Noronichiking Bank, have large
you want
JGB exposures.
Sorry. Inflation
and deflation of the currency. The Japanese, to get a real understanding of this, don't listen to anything I just even read. Go back to what V was talking about.
Exactly.
And it will be much clearer, as he is the financial guy who did talk about this and break the story on our show. And according to the Examiner article from yesterday that we touched on, it talked about V and who he was, and what he explained on our show, and how his track record was very accurate.
Exactly.
Almost 100% accuracy we're talking about here, as the Examiner said.
And that's, folks, that's at examiner.com. Examiner.com.
Yeah. And we're going to move on to some other news.
Wait, before you move on, just got an email here from Valerie. Valerie, thank you very much. Two emails I want to hit real quick. You and I, Joe, and we're talking about Adam Kokesh, right?
Yes.
The gun. Okay. Valerie sent an email. She said she remembers a couple of years ago, Cliff Kincaid had written a story about Adam Kokesh. And she said she really wants to make people, she wants to make sure people know who he really is. James Simpson writes, Kokesh makes it sound like he's one of your genuine stand-up patriots taking brave action against the oppressive government. Well, there's no doubt that the government is becoming increasingly oppressive under Obama, and Obama's intentions for the Second Amendment are both unconstitutional and, by all means, evil. Kokesh is not the person to be leading this or any other kind of protest, armed or otherwise. Cliff Kincaid did a complete dossier on Kokesh a while ago as a paid Russian agent and Russian TV
I heard about
host.
this.
Okay. Now, look, I like Cliff Kincaid. I've talked to him numerous times, Cliff Kincaid. But he also and I don't hold out, like, I don't have a problem with somebody appearing on RT, for example, if that's what's meant here by Russian TV. And I don't know, Valerie, I don't know if that's the case. But he's a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War. Again, nothing. I don't have a problem with that either. But a copycat of the radical left Vietnam Veterans Against the War, the anti-American, anti-military group that current Secretary of State John Kerry joined. So you've got, by the sounds of it, you've got some interesting affiliations, leftist Code Pink affiliations.
Yep. I was just going to say Code Pink. A lot of people say he has other other agendas that are associated with his associations.
Okay,
I'm not sure either way. I have not done the research either way.
Nor have I.
What I know of the man is he is a Marine. He came back to the States. He was speaking out against certain issues where he was dead on. Other issues I didn't agree with him, but that's fine. He seemed to be on the right track with the truth and hitting the right spots. And then something changed. I think it was last year. And I don't know what that was. I haven't really been following him since. But he seems a lot different now. When I did go check out one of his videos that he recently broadcast compared to maybe a year and a half ago.
Okay.
I know his platform isn't as high profile as it was as far as whatever network he was on.
Well, here's the way I look at it.
That shouldn't matter.
No, it shouldn't, except to the extent of this. And here's the way I look at it. You could be the nicest guy, and this Adam Kokesh, he could be the nicest man in the world with the best of intentions, but not be the right person to lead something like this. Okay, this would be like me leading a group of military, because I've never been in the military. I've got no business doing that.
On a jog, yeah.
I've got no business doing that. So especially when you're into this territory, into this really holy cow kind of environment, that
you
could
have people's lives.
Yes.
You're dealing with.
Exactly. And then you've got to look too. Are the people who are following him falling into a trap?
Okay, there's a debate going on here.
Okay,
and it's a very valid point. people
Okay.
are saying, coming out and saying, good for him, good for this movement. I hope they make a point. And they're not talking about anything crazy or violent. They're just saying, to make a point.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's people that are tearing them down, saying it's a bad idea, that they shouldn't do it. But where's the middle line? Where are, people are saying, well, it's better than doing nothing. So for the third hour, if we can do this, I would like callers to call in and tell us what you guys think our place in this battle should be. What should be our...
you mean you and me?
Everybody.
Everyone's okay.
As Christians, as citizens of the United States, we see this evil going on.
Right.
We know what the problems, where they stem from, and that is the evil, the darkness, the satanic element. What is our place in this battle? What should we be doing, and what can we do?
You know what? I mean, let me just, before that third hour, let me just say this. I personally believe that we need to do something. Now, having the belief in the need to do something and then doing the wrong thing, wow, that's a huge difference, I believe, because
I want just opinions, though. I want to hear ideas. I want to hear what people are thinking, where their heads at. At the same time, you have people who want to overthrow the government. I think that would be a good idea if it was done in the way we talked about earlier. If the people were held accountable, and as far as the legal system, put on trial, evidence brought before them.
Legal,
correct?
Yeah, you're not talking about a bunch of guys.
Past that. We can't do that, though. It's so far past that.
Right. I mean, can you imagine a bunch of guys in pickup trucks storming the White House? Okay, they would not make it. It's just not going to happen. Or if you, but if you had a mechanism, by the way, I'm sorry, I didn't. But if you had a mechanism to remove the people in power who are not eligible or who are seditious and treasonous, I believe that's necessary to be done. So, I mean, I believe that we need to have something done. And then before I turn it back over to you, I want to thank Rich from Wagner, Oklahoma, who's listening right now, who just mentions this. This is off topic. He says, thank you for your comment about the misuse of our people in uniform. And he's a veteran, and he took it the same way I did. The uniform does represent much more than attire, the history, the sacrifice, the long-suffering service to the people of our United States. It's represented by our uniforms of all the services. The men in uniform at the White House, that's our house, folks. It's not meant to be defined as the palace guard. And then, of course, he writes, from me to Obama, show some respect, Sonny. That uniform represents the people that have died protecting the office you occupy. Rich, God bless you. Thank you. That's Rich from Wagner, Oklahoma. Thanks for listening, and thanks for that comment. But, Joe, go. I'm going to turn it back to you. Go ahead and go on. Thanks, Rich.
Yeah. No, and the reason I want to do this in the third hour, take these calls, is because, when we say, that we don't think it's a good idea to go with a gun and march on Washington with this group. And it's not because of what they are doing. It's how the approach was, how it was kind of put out there. It wasn't a protest. It was a armed, what they call a revolution, I think they said. Something along those lines. The language was it seemed...
pretty insightful.
Yes. So,
insightful.
And I've gotten emails and people saying, well, what should we do then? And I always say we need this battle, as Steve and Pastor Langford and all the wonderful guests that we've had on our shows say, and the Bible says we're in a spiritual battle. This is a different kind of warfare. We have our place in the battle. We can't win our country back through politics anymore. We can only win souls back for the Lord and hope. And I know that He will take care of us. And I will just want other people to have that same attitude. But I'll get emails, saying, well, I don't see you offering a solution. And that's true. My solution is what I just said. As far as a political solution or a tactical solution that we can, as a group, go carry out to gain back control of our government, I don't have one. So maybe I don't have a place in talking about how other people are doing it, but I do at the same time to give advice from the way I see things. But let's move on to the news because we got 20 minutes till the third hour.
Let's do it. All right.
Aspartame.
Yeah, you mentioned this, and I was a little bit confused. Everyone knows what aspartame is, or you should. It's that artificial sweetener that's found in diet soft drinks and what have you. What's up with this right now? What are we talking about here with aspartame?
We are talking about milk. Dairy Association's lobby to the FDA to alter the definition of milk to include aspartame. And it is just as bad as it sounds.
Okay, you're going to have to say that one more time so I can really mentally...
Dairy Association's lobby.
Right.
The FDA to alter the definition of milk to include aspartame.
How so? I mean, how does that make sense?
Let me read the article for you.
All right.
It's not quite as bad as some have reported. Cancer-causing artificial sweetening additives such as aspartame likely would still need to be listed in tiny letters as ingredients, but the milk could otherwise be packaged, marketed, and sold just as milk. The stated goal is to reverse the trend of lagging dairy consumption by children, particularly in school, from the U.S. government's Federal Register.
Okay.
The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, is announcing the International Dairy Foods Association and National Milk Producers Federation have filed a petition requesting the agency amend the standard of identity for milk and 17 other dairy products to provide for the use of any safe and suitable sweetener as an optional ingredient. These two agencies request their proposed amendments to the milk standard of identify to allow optional characterization flavoring ingredients used in milk to be sweetened with any safe, suitable sweetener, including non-nutritive sweeteners such as aspartame. Basically, what the lobbying groups are dairy groups are lobbying to the FDA, or some dairy groups, I would say the big agriculture groups are lobbying the FDA to include aspartame in milk. We know aspartame has very detrimental health risks, or at least those who have looked into it.
But see, here's the problem. People hear us talk about this, they'll go to their favorite search engine and put in aspartame in milk, and up comes, for example, Snopes. Dairy groups are petitioning the FDA to allow the use of artificial sweeteners in milk without labeling requirements and such and so on. And there's a lot of misleading language in, for example, in my view, Snopes, where they say, well, it's true that some dairy groups are petitioning the FDA to allow the use of artificial sweeteners in milk without having to label the milk as reduced calorie or reduced sugar. And then you've got the false statement, dairy groups are petitioning the FDA to allow them to add aspartame to milk and not include it in the ingredients list. But the issue is that's not even the issues that you're referring to.
No. What is this article says the dietary regulations are there for a reason.
Right.
Most of us, and this from the Huffington Post, most of us believe that drinking milk is good for our health. Milk can provide us with some of the essential nutrients we all need, like calcium and potassium. And did you know a glass of milk is also a terrific source of high-quality protein? For these reasons, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetic recommends children and adults alike consume 2 to 3 servings per dairy a day. But somehow, Americans of all ages seem to be drinking less and less milk. And according to the Academy, only 25% of kids ages 9 to 19 drink the recommended amount of milk each day. One reason for this may be schools have started to ban the sale of chocolate milk and other flavored milk because of its high calorie content. In order to compete with the low-calorie drinks, Diet Colas, the dairy industry is planning to replace the sugar in flavored milk with aspartame or another non-caloric sweetener.
All right.
The problem is
the FDA.
strictly restricts and regulates something called the statement of identity for food items. That means if you are calling something milk, it better be mostly what came out of the cow. That's why we see products labeled soy milk, not soy
For once,
space
I
milk.
actually agree with them. I mean, I agree with that.
Hence, the addition of aspartame is an artificial sweetener will change the standard of identity of milk, and would require something like chocolate milk to be labeled reduced calorie chocolate milk. International Dairy Food Association and the National Milk Producer Federation, recently petitioned the FDA to change this clause. They say children are adverse to the low-calorie label, and that labeling change will negatively affect milk sales.
Now let me ask you this question, and I'm wondering how many people are listening or asking themselves the same question. Out of the wars in Syria, out of everything in the world that's going on, from the taking of the phone records of press in Washington D.C. to Benghazi, you're talking about milk and aspartame.
Yep.
Why? What in the world? Of what importance? And I asked you this before the show. Out of everything going on, why are you grabbing this?
Okay.
Why are we talking about this?
Every day, most people drink milk, right?
I agree.
Okay. Aspartame is a very dangerous chemical.
Okay, I agree with that too.
According to people who are for health, not the FDA. It is a chemical that can damage your brain.
Yep.
You've heard of the dumbing down of America?
Very much.
We have fluoride in the water. We have heavy metals in our air.
It's a slow kill.
We have the aspartame type ingredients in our foods, especially in the processed foods. The Food Safety Modernization Act we talked about yesterday changes dietary standards, nutritional standards of foods, lowering what is considered to be the daily amount of whatever we'll say 10 grams of protein is a daily recommended amount.
Right.
They're going to be lowering these. They're going to be lowering these from the food. And as I said before, if you read State Memorandum 200 published by Henry Kissinger in 1974 all the way up until the Food Safety Modernization Act, they talk about removing these, where to the point you could eat 3 meals a day and starve and die of malnutrition. They are removing the nutrition, the important ingredients. The reason we eat the food is for what? For our flesh and our bodies to live. It is... food and water are two most basic necessities. Now, when you remove what's important from food out and you put toxins in, not only are you not getting yourself the right amount of nutrition, you are putting yourself in a huge amount of danger. And I'm talking about milk because it affects each and every one of us. Not that Benghazi doesn't, not that the IRS scandal doesn't, but this people need to pay attention to, because if you knowingly...
That's right.
Right. I mean,
ladies and gentlemen, and that is the reason why it's important to you, and I wholeheartedly agree.
Good.
Because seriously, when I first saw it, I thought, wait a minute, this? But if you look at the goals of the Codex Alimentarius, the United Nations Agenda 21, the depopulation of America, the soft kill of America. Look at what we're doing here. Look at what's going on. Look at the big picture, because this is part of the larger picture here. It's not only us bringing home veterans with amputations from a war that the rules of engagement have been made so we can't win. It's now the slow kill here domestically and actually globally. And this is all part of it. If you've got to look at the big picture. This is part of the big picture. So yeah, milk is part of the big picture if you really want to get into it. And I applaud you for doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Real quick, we're going to hit a couple of headlines. One, This is from the 14th of May. Russian bombers performed simulated strikes on Sweden and the U.S. On May 6, Russia received its first shipment of Sukhoi Su-34 twin-seat fighter bombers, known by NATO as Fullback.
No, Randy, that's not Saki. Okay, go on.
The Su-34 is the newest generation of fighter bombers intended to replace the outdated Soviet-era Su-24s. While the modernization of the Russian Air Force may, and rightfully so, raise a few eyebrows of concern, this alone is not sufficient cause for alarm. Russia's recent Air Force maneuvers are, however. On the night of March 29, 2013, two Russian Tupolev Tu-22M3 bombers, known by NATO as backfires, simulated an aerial attack on Stockholm and southern Sweden. Also, the Tu-22M3 is a new supersonic long-range bomber capable of delivering nuclear weapons to overseas targets. The 6 aircraft flew dangerously close to Swedish airspace, roughly 20 miles from the territorial borders, according to Business Insider.
This is stuff that you're not hearing on the well, if you do hear on the mainstream media, you're not understanding. People are not explaining the full concept of what's taking place here. This is a show of muscle. You know, it's amazing to me that we are going toe to toe with against Russia in Syria, and people are not getting it. Now we are seeing other things happening on the periphery, like Joe's talking about here.
And not only Sweden is having the Russian drills affect them, also the United States, according to the Free Beacon, April 28th, 2 Russian Tu-95s, known by NATO as Bear H, long-range heavy nuclear bombers, were detected flying into the military's Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone near the Aleutians,
Aleutian Islands.
Aleutians, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta tell you, this is not good. This is not good, people.
This is where strategic missile defense systems are located. Again, the Russian bombers did not penetrate the Alaskan or U.S. airspace, but they did fly dangerously close to it, prompting 2 U.S. F-22 fighter jets to scramble. On February 12th, 2 of the same class of Russian Bear H strategic bombers flew over the encircled Guam. This also prompted a quick U.S. deployment of F-15s to intercept and escort the Russian bombers away from U.S. airspace.
Let me ask the people a question too. Would this be happening 30 years ago or 20 years ago? I don't think so. And I think that the world is shaping up to allow this to take place, and we are seeing the chess pieces being moved for the ultimate battle, and that's between the United States and Russia. The United States and Russia and China together. And of course, you've seen and we've talked about this in our program before, the Russia and China economic development initiatives that we're seeing take place. We're seeing them striking at our soft underbelly, which is our economy. You're seeing now the military might and the I don't want to really put this as a provocation, but more of a show of hey, we can do what we want to do. We've got you over a barrel. And I say that almost literally. That bow of Obama is perhaps over a barrel of oil. And this is what we're seeing take place. The provocation, not necessarily. Show of force, show of arrogance, absolutely, 100%. A sign of things to come, yes. This is why this is important.
Okay, and one thing I want to thank our friend for this information. This is about the aspartame. Aspartame was created during World War II. Guess who created? What country created it?
Germany.
Correct.
And
it contains the same substances used for embalming the dead. Yep. It activates at a body temperature, and is very harmful to your health. And thank you for that information.
People would be surprised to learn what has come out of Germany, really, and what the negative effects it has on your body, various chemicals. And also people would be surprised to learn how many of the U.S. families. I mean, look at George Herbert Walker Bush, Prescott Bush, the Bush family. Look at what they did. I.G. Farber, with respect to Nazi Germany. There's a lot to learn here. People think all of this is just harmless and innocuous. No, it's not. And you're right, and thank you very much, whoever wrote that in there about the effects of aspartame at body temperature. It does cause. Well, as a matter of fact, Michael J. Fox was an avid drinker of diet soda products, and I remember, and I don't know if he has come out against diet soda products or not, diet pop, but there was a lot of discussion, at least informal discussion, about his consumption of diet soda and his current disease, progressive disease. Is there a causal relationship to it? I don't know. I don't know if it's ever been officially declared or determined, but the fact of the matter is, you're taking all of these unnatural ingredients. And you're right, that statement about starving people to death. You might have 3 meals, but you will not have the nutrients available to you.
With just a few minutes left in this hour, 2 stories here. One, Syria conflict. BBC shown signs of chemical attack. A BBC correspondent who visited the northern town of Swareb was told by eyewitnesses that government helicopters had dropped at least 2 devices containing poisonous gas. The government has vehemently denied claims that it has used chemical agents. The U.S. had warned that such a deployment would be a red line for possible intervention. I'm reading this because this just came out. This is new.
Right. Right.
Obama said that the U.S. had seen evidence of chemical weapons being used in Syria, but it was important to get more specific information about what happened. In a meeting with the Turkish Prime Minister, Erdogan, in Washington, he said all options, both diplomatic and military, were being considered. And also, on meeting with Erdogan, I saw an article where Erdogan stated that he was going to be rallying or helping some known radical jihadist group. So he's sitting next to Obama. He was making these statements.
Right.
I find that kind of interesting. But the BBC is trying to, or is setting a line here, setting a marker to pick this back up, for the media to pick this back up. Not quite sure where they're going with this.
Well, I kind of, let me chime in here, because I had a conversation with an official within the intelligence world. All of the print space, all of the radio time dedicated to watch Benghazi or watch Syria, because Syria is the red line in the sand for Russia. We have said this over and over and over again, and we have seen this picked up. Adam Housley from Fox, Jennifer Griffin from Fox, Cheryl Atkinson about Benghazi, all of this. Folks, do you think that we could have, perhaps, when I say we, I'm talking about the people, the reporting, is it possible that by exposing the plans about the chemical weapons, the fact that we were on the air beating this drum almost nightly and continue to do so, and other agencies or news reporting agencies are doing the same thing, is it possible that we maybe delayed, that we were the cause of the delay, or even perhaps the rethinking of this? Is it possible?
I don't know.
You know what? According to the source I talked to yesterday,
we should ask Google, because Google knows everything.
Yeah. Well, look, I here's what I believe. I believe that we are still going into Syria. I believe that is that's, I don't want to say a done deal, but that is a plan of the power brokers. It's going to happen. But
of course, it's going to happen. It's written in the
don't
Bible.
Forget,
you ruined my segue.
Well, I'm sorry, man.
Completely ruined it.
I'm. You know what? You know what? I take back my apology. The segue can wait. How's that? No. It's the. I think Syria. It's important because you're talking about 2 years worth of fighting, of bloodshed in Syria. You're talking about 80,000 lives being lost in Syria. More than and even more I think over 1 million that have been displaced at the hands of the Western governments. And now, if you have a chemical weapons incident, for example, and we act on it, we drag NATO into it, we put an air cap over Syria, what will the Russian response be? I can guarantee you Putin is not going to stand for this, because Syria is that firewall against the disturbance of the Federation of Russian States, the Southern Federation of Russian States. And what is important there is the flow of energy, the oil, natural gas, into the Caspian region, to and from the Caspian region. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, I'd like to think that perhaps by exposing the plans, perhaps, just perhaps, maybe this is just wishful thinking on our part, my part maybe, but maybe we could have changed history just a touch. And I'm not saying that is a fact. I guess I'm asking that as a question, but I think that that's very possible. That could be. But it's still, look for it to happen. It's still going to happen.
We are up against the break. One headline and quick thing I'll read to take us out here, which I was going to jump into, about Google knowing everything. Well, Google, it is now being reported, knows when you are home. Google has devised yet another ingenious way of convincing people to hand over their real-time location data by offering location-specific reminders as part of its now Google Now feature. We got to watch this, because I got information. We're going to have to hit this tomorrow.
Absolutely.
As we take calls the next hour, because Eric Schmidt is getting in deep with the globalists, with the Bilderberg Group, and his company, or the company he works for and controls now, Google, is doing some things you would be surprised to learn. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We'll be right back after these.
Honey, I'm home.
Yeah, we'll be right back after these short messages, taking your calls. 661-244-9839. Stay with us.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
By the way, I'm not one of those that say that you should investigate media outlets when they illegally and criminally take government top-secret information from somebody and splash it all over their pages. What I'm saying is, in this case, it was way overboard, the broad attack on a news outlet. Absolutely unacceptable. You know what we have today? I'm prepared to say it. We have a quasi-police state. I'm not overstating it. With the Internal Revenue Anybody who pays taxes in this country, I know it's a shrinking number of us, it is outrageous what this tax code requires us to present the government with. And now that you've heard me read from parts of the Inspector General's report, look how they treat us. Look how shabbily they treat us. And their biggest defense is we're incompetent, we're mismanaged, we don't know what the hell we're doing, we violate our own rules, but don't worry, we didn't do anything with a corrupt heart. What the hell are you talking about? Our own health care decisions cannot be made without the government signing off on them. That is now the IRS. More and more you look around, you really think about it, whether it's light bulbs or shower heads or toilets or water flow or toasters or automobiles. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean to upset you. My purpose is not to be controversial, but honest. Yes, I feel more and more this is a quasi-police state. I want to tell you about LifeLock.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. That was a little. We were actually having a staff meeting during the break. We apologize for that.
There seems to be some problems. People are not able to reach the show or get into the chat room.
And we got to tell you this. It's our understanding. If you are on a military base, remember us welcoming the people in Afghanistan listening on military bases. Apparently, my big mouth caused some issue because all military, according to two sources, not just one, but two sources, have been cut off from listening, prohibited from listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann report. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? To me, that's a rather sad state of affairs, I believe. I don't know. But look, folks, every day, I ask you this every single day. What steps have you taken to prepare? Do you have enough food? Do you have enough water to last, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 90 days? How much water and food do you have? One thing that I learned recently, up close and personal, you know what I needed and I didn't have? I needed an emergency survival kit. And I just won't go into the details, but I could have used one and I didn't have one. Folks, I've got a solution for you. Just call my friends at American Survival Wholesale, 818-720-0759. That's their phone number, 818-720-0759. Better yet, go to their website, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Tell them we sent you. The Hagmann and Hagmann report sent you. You'll receive a full-size, king-size. I do this all the time. You're going to get a Bible, a full-size Bible, in a waterproof case. It's a beautiful gift on every purchase over $199 if you tell them that Doug and Joe sent you. So don't put this off. Do it today. They have products that will work on any budget. They're going to work with you. Again, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. They've got a great email address too. If you want to ask them any question, just email them at bugoutamerica@usa.com. That's bugoutamerica@usa.com.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report third hour, where we are going to be taking your calls specifically on what you think our place in this battle is. And we can be talking about a spiritual battle, or we can be talking about a battle for the United States. Folks listening live that can hear my voice, that are trying to get into chat, it appears I am not even able to get into chat, signed in as Joe Hagmann on Blog Talk Radio. And I thank you for your patience.
I didn't press
we
any
will
buttons on us,
contact
folks.
BTR and see what the issue is, because we love the chat room. We love the people in the chat room, the feedback from it, the
interface,
fellowship that's in there, and I will definitely be in contact with BTR at some point tonight to figure out why that is giving us problems. But
it's always something, Lucy. It's always something.
We're going to go to the phones as promised, and what I'm going to try and do is take new callers first, so this way we can get people who tried to call in last night who weren't able to get through, and new people on. So I'm going to go to first area code 626. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
We don't screen calls.
Doug and Joe, hey, unfortunately I'm not a new caller, but I really appreciate the question that you've posed here this evening. It's just so relevant and so timely, and so I actually pulled off the road in order to participate, because I do have a couple of thoughts here. I want to suggest, folks, that everyone that can hear my voice at this moment, I believe that we are, all of us, on the outer intersections of a massive control grid that is in a stage of development. Case in point, InfoWars is recently reporting on these new quote-unquote traffic lights being installed in Las Vegas. I haven't seen a picture of them, but apparently they have a control pod and a couple of screens. They're like smart traffic monitors or some such thing. And I wanted to start off with this control grid concept, because if we read Scripture, we learn that we are moving, and we all have different thoughts and opinions and hopefully discernment on the rapidity with which we are moving toward, the time of the beast. And Scripture tells us that as well as Christians, but everyone on the earth really, we will be unable to provide for ourselves without either the name of the beast or his number on our foreheads or our right hands. And that puts an incredible onus before us, not only for our own well-being, but for the well-being of those around us, our families, our communities, etc. And I'd like to sort of compliment what one of the gentlemen who called in last night said. I thought he made some great remarks that were they were academic, they were foundational, and it was about church attendance and about those of us who, and I myself have been unchurched here for a short time, the importance of the fellowship and the community of the church. And Doug and Joe, on March 22nd, when Steve Quayle and V were on, Steve Quayle received an email in real time from one of his intercessors, Romy. And unfortunately, I don't have this sourced in Scripture. Joe, you may know where this is, or Doug, but Romy in the email said that when Christ was actually on the cross, he said, or he indicated to those in attendance that they should take up their cloaks, their food, I think fill their water skins, and their swords. Joe, is that ringing a bell?
I know the reference to the sell your cloak to buy a sword,
but I'm not sure if it was when he was on the cross. So is that what you said, caller?
I'm not sure. I think it was right before that, or on his way there.
Well, that was in the garden.
Okay,
and
right. Okay,
yeah, that was. This was separate, and maybe this is like a little homework assignment. Perhaps Steve still has the email, or he may know it. But the reason I mentioned it is because I think it sets up sort of an A-B paradigm, if you will, to what we as believers, what I think is a healthy perspective on the balance between faith and preparations in the natural. And that being said, I wanted to mention two things. I want to give credit where it's due. InfoWars, Joe, you just mentioned Google. Folks, in 1954, a group of elitists began meeting in, I believe it was Switzerland, and they met at the Bilderberg Hotel and thus took the name Bilderberg. And InfoWars is using the term Googleberg because Eric Schmidt is integrating the control grid reach of Google into the Bilderberg environment. So it's really an unholy alliance. And they are meeting in 2 weeks in London, and Google has a very high presence of personnel there, including Mr. Schmidt. Additionally,
you stole our thunder from that. You stole our thunder from that. We were going to talk about that, but no, I'm glad you did.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I sincerely am.
It proved. No, you know what? It seriously, it proves that our listenership is probably one cut, or not probably, is a cut above all the others. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You know, Doug, they certainly are. I am so blessed every night. First of all, it's my favorite 3 hours of the day. I am so blessed by the folks that call in. I learn so much, and Hagmann and Hagmann family, that word really means something. I'll try to move quickly because I don't want to monopolize too much more time. Also from InfoWars, gentlemen, there is a group out of Colorado. They are calling themselves the Freedom Defense Force. And gentlemen, they are meeting in a place, it's either Westlake or Westbrook, Colorado. And the gentleman who called in said to Alex, he asked permission to plug the group, and Alex said, sure. And they're calling themselves the Freedom Defense Force, and they are doing physical exercise, they're going on jogs, they're doing home meetings. I don't know if that name indicates a militant force or not. I don't want to make assumptions, but that's sort of what I've heard recently that the secular world is doing. And I just wanted to add quickly that as Christians, I would really encourage everyone to think about community and to think about the people that you know, including the people that you do business with, perhaps your doctor, your dentist, maybe the individual that tutors your children in one of their courses, because we may be entering a time where we need to think in terms of where we live, the population density of where our homes are located, because just like an overabundance of fiat currency chases the same goods and services, when goods and services are limited and there's a large quantity of people who need them, the goods and services are going to become scarce. And the last thing I'll mention about the community idea is that for the last couple of years, gentlemen, among the Patriot movement and the well-informed, you'll come across this term, the American Redoubt. And the redoubt geographically is Washington and Oregon states east of the Cascade Mountain Range, Wyoming, Utah, and Montana. And this is an area where many, many families, including Chuck Baldwin, who relocated his family from the church he pastored in Florida, this is where they are choosing to come together. I used the term on a previous call, to cloister for spiritual fellowship, and hopefully it doesn't come to this, but perhaps for protection.
I remember that, yep.
Wow. The last thing I'll mention quickly, gentlemen, is I read a book by a man named Lawrence Gonzalez, and the book is called Deep Survival: Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why. And when I picked the book up, I thought I was getting my hands on, like a great sort of testosterone adventure, like people who survived a shipwreck or, prisoners of war type thing. And the book does have some of that element to it. But Lawrence Gonzalez has a PhD, and what he's dealing with are the psychologies surrounding why people survive in extreme circumstances or situations. And Doug and Joe, one of the things I remember from Dr. Gonzalez's book is what they call the us-them psychology. And this sounds so harsh, but what it really boils down to is when resources become scarce, when people are anxious, they're nervous, particularly people who are not spending time on their knees before the throne every day, people who are either unwilling or don't understand how to refresh their strength through faith. When these types of events begin to occur, folks, you want to be part of the us in that us-them paradigm. All the us's take care of each other. The thems, history shows us, all throughout history, particularly the 20th century. The quote-unquote thems, they're ostracized. They may wind up as refugees, etc. So, in closing, my feeling tonight is I just want to encourage everyone to, number one, as Joe and Doug always emphasize, and God bless them for it, number one, spiritual house in order, faith, 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 faith. In addition to that, begin to look at your day-to-day lives through an additional lens of asking yourself a couple basic questions. If stores were not open, what types of things do I use that I need? If fuel is unavailable, am I in an environment where I can go about a day-to-day lifestyle, nourish myself physically, spiritually? Am I safe? Can I rest without fear of injury, etc.? Is my home safe from potential theft or any type of violent activity? I just really want to encourage folks to always first take it to the cross, but in addition to that, really look at your day-to-day lives. If you have to, carry a little notebook and a pen around with you for a couple days and really start to think in terms of self-sufficiency. And my last comment will simply be, if we do this now, if we take advantage of the normalcy of right now, then when times get difficult, we are not a detriment to those around us, but we are a benefit, and most importantly, we are a ministerial benefit. We can reach out to others for the Lord. And I'll make that my final remark, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very, very well said.
You're so right. And we really appreciate your call. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I just want to urge everyone too, when you listen to this program, folks, especially when we have people like V on and others, have a notepad and a piece of a pen with you, because there are a lot of things that are said that go by so quickly, and sometimes you don't have time to go listen to the archive again. It's always good to have that, and always carry a piece of paper, pen on you. If you can carry if you have a cell phone with a camera, carry that with you as well, for many, many, many reasons. Just a few things to kind of keep things up. So go ahead, Joe.
I'm going to read this quick couple sentences, and I'll shut up and take phone calls for the rest of the show. But this is speaking right directly at what we're talking about the battle, what our place is. It goes on to say that the object of the enemy, the arguments and threats, the seductive promises which they offer, have one end in view. He cannot get at the people of God so long as they abide in the rocks above him. So he seeks to entice them out of their cover. Come out to me. If we do that, we shall be beaten, for we have no safety apart from abiding in Christ. If we forsake our position of humble trust in Christ, if we are moved from our attitude of faith by fear of the consequences, or if we are enticed on the ground which is not that of the absolute lordship of Jesus Christ, we are bound to be defeated. Faith cannot afford to reason with the enemy. We must not even consider his suggestions. Our safety consists in abiding in Christ at all times.
Faith cannot afford to reason with the enemy. That's an interesting quote. What scripture is that from?
This is from a book.
Oh, from a book. Okay.
By T. Austin Sparks, strong in the day of battle. Moving
Okay.
along on the phones here, area code 443. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, how you doing? I'm a first-time caller.
Beautiful.
I wanted to answer a question on what you were asking earlier on the march on July 4th. I basically believe that on this day that because of what's going on and how controversial, like, blood could be shed, people could be arrested because of all these rules and regulations. I really think, though, that speaking of, biblical terms, I really think that it's going to unlock some type of gates in the heavens. Like, literally, I believe this. And I also believe that statistically that if this happens, like, say, some people get arrested, they don't let us in the D.C., regardless, next July 4th, and statistically, 1 out of 30 times, I believe, the system will budge, meaning, override, whatever. That's what I believe in. That's how I feel about this whole march going on July 4th. But I had a question, though, actually.
Wait a second. Before you get to the question, I heard you say us in that sentence. Are you planning on taking part in the march?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm in Baltimore, so it's only like 30 minutes.
Okay. All right. Then perhaps you could be the caller designate. Okay. When, and I'm not sure what day the 4th of July falls upon, but when we're on the program the day following that march, if you could call in and give us a report of what happened, we'd really appreciate it.
No problem. I'd love to. I've been looking for you guys for a while, and somehow my mind just blocked it out, and then found out the hours, and then called up Blog Talk. But
okay, all right, go ahead. What's your question?
I wanted to ask you a question on Benghazi. I'm trying to still grasp the whole situation and what's going on. Basically, what through asking let's say an adult, I through researching and hearing everything, it sounds like with President Gaddafi had segregated through his pro-Gaddafi people, and then he made the rest of the country poor, apparently. So the poor people or whatever, the people, didn't like the stuff he was doing there. So in other words, it sounded like they were protesting at the same time when Tunisia got overthrown and I believe another country. And so anyway, Egypt, I believe.
Okay, you're doing fine. You're doing excellent, as a matter of fact, in describing and laying the groundwork. So go ahead.
All right. So basically, then what happened was the people came. This guy, they wanted to overthrow Gaddafi as well, and apparently they were backed up by the Obama administration. Now, what I see is that protesters, in other words, got armed by the administration. They armed them, gave them tanks. Now, these are protesters, which they call rebels.
Right.
So it sounds like it's getting twisted, this story, and this is what they're really trying to hide. So they're focusing on. So after that they got overthrown, then they set up a whole new government with the administration, and set up a whole democracy. In other words, which no one really knows about what's going on because it's behind closed doors, and they're getting their whole, things going on, freedom over there in Libya right now. But after that happened, it sounds like, Al-Qaeda, let's not even say Al-Qaeda, let's say the Taliban or other freedom fighters went and took over the embassy. And apparently they did it in other parts of Africa. I believe Sudan, another embassy got maybe 5 other embassies got tore down to piece by let's say Taliban people. So
okay, let me correct you in a couple of things. I think a couple of points that you made were excellent because a lot of people don't get this. For you and for listeners, picture Libya as actually 2 countries, And frankly, I did not understand this or know about this, but the western part of Libya would have been the Gaddafi Libya, if you will. The eastern part would have been the terrorist Muslim Brotherhood, the bad kind of the bad section of town, if you will. Okay, the real the Muslim Brotherhood type of terrorists that wanted to take out Gaddafi. Well, okay, now knowing that, Gaddafi had done a lot for the loyalists of his country. Okay, the people loyal to the country. In fact, he had 144 tons of gold, and there were a lot of things he did to the infrastructure of his country. Now, having said that, and we worked, by the way, the United States worked with Gaddafi throughout multiple administrations. Now, that said, when the Arab Spring happened, when Tunisia happened, when Egypt happened, Libya, we played a role in Libya to the extent where some of the anti-Gaddafi pro-Saudis on the eastern part of Libya went in and attacked the Gaddafi loyalists and Gaddafi people. We assisted in that venture. In comes Ambassador Stevens. In comes the our role in overthrowing Libya. Where's the 144 tons of gold, by the way? Well, that's a question that needs to be answered. But that aside, we went in as a country under humanitarian purposes, or the auspices of humanitarian aid, to collect the man pads and the shoulder fire missiles and all the arms, to take them away from the terrorists and to destroy them. Well, instead of destroying them, what we did was we sent them up into Syria to overthrow Assad. I don't know if this is starting to make sense. The demonstrations that you saw, for example, in Cairo, in other locations, but in particularly in Cairo, and even in Tripoli on 9/11, had nothing to do with what happened in Benghazi. There were two separate incidents. What happened in Benghazi was a planned attack against a CIA compound. It was not an embassy or consulate. That was the logistics hub that was sending the weapons to Syria. And I don't want to confuse too many people or to confuse you, but there's multiple dynamics at play here. So we actually were responsible for assisting in taking out Gaddafi for the implementation of a regime that would be responsive to Saudi Arabia, specifically on the eastern part of that country, for the oil wells for Saudi Arabia. It's all about oil, it's all about energy, it's all about power. I don't know if that helps you or if it even adds more questions, but if you go to I just want to say this too. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, that's HomelandSecurityUS.com, our home base, or CanadaFreePress.com, we've got a compendium of all reports about Benghazi that gets into Libya and the Arab Spring. That'll help you understand.
I'll check that, but it still kind of drifts away from my question. To me, what it sounds like is that protesters against Gaddafi got armed by the UN, France, whoever, and the U.S., that they gave them guns to go and attack Gaddafi, in other words.
Yes.
Okay,
well,
now...
you're correct.
Isn't that illegal?
Very much so. It's against international law. In fact, we signed on the small arms or the UN Arms Trade Treaty to prevent just what we did in Libya. Exactly, you're exactly right. Isn't that illegal?
So, in
100%.
other words, then this happened, and then in other words, they thought they were going to get away with it, but then the Muslim whoever stabbed them in the back and then went and started killing Americans in embassies, is what you're saying. So then they got frustrated because the parents of the people, the victims, had more questions and so forth and so on.
Well,
right? And then,
Yeah, not quite, but you're close. What happened was Ansar al-Sharia, which is a terrorist group in northern Africa, attacked Benghazi. Well, they were it wasn't the Libyans; it was Ansar al-Sharia backed by the Syrians. Okay, that were responsible for the attack in Benghazi, and the Russians. This is like a mind. I got to tell you, caller, this is the whole program by itself is a mind blowing, very complicated situation. But you're right when you said it's illegal, and this is nation building by countries that have no business doing so.
Okay, I'm going to sleep on what you said and try to digest it because it was a lot, and I'll maybe call in another time to ask you about Benghazi. But have you ever heard about the Bath Party?
I'm sorry, the Bath Party? Is that what you said?
Okay, yes, in like about the 60s, Iraq. No, not yeah. Saddam actually was the one that was holding it.
Oh yeah.
But how does that because apparently 30,000 poor women, because I guess this was after the collapse in Russia, so about 30,000 women went to Syria and married like lawyers and doctors and basically, in other words, Russian and other women from other parts of Europe all moved there. Is that true?
Boy, yes, but yes. In a one-word answer, yes. You're talking about the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, which is a political party that originated in Syria, and I'm just trying to how can I put this? It's this pan-Arab nationalist movement that also included not. This also has its tentacles, or had its tentacles, with Iraq as well. Okay, so yes. However, if you're trying to combine the two, there's a lot of real estate between. There's a lot of real estate in there. I'm not sure how you're attempting to fit the Ba'ath Party.
No, I was just seeing to see if you knew about it, because apparently that's why it sounds like Russia's backing up Syria on a different level. I'm not trying to combine it, I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, yeah. With the Iraqi, yes. Ultimately, the short answer to that is yes. But like I said, there's a lot of explaining that would have to be done between that. But to cut to the chase, yes, you're correct in theory, and in practicality.
Okay, well, yeah, I just wanted to see if you knew about it, and you definitely had a lot of information on it. So yeah, I'll call in some other time then and ask you more about Benghazi. Thanks a lot for answering that, though.
Sure, anytime, and feel free to send me an email too. God bless.
God bless you. Thank you for your call.
Take care.
All right.
And Joe, I got to tell you, when you get into the discussions like that, I love that question, but there is so much to this. It took me probably 40 hours of research and learning and talking with others to really get to the level where he was asking questions at. So, you know,
yeah,
it's like saying, "What space?" I mean, and he had some great questions too, and very, very. It sounded like he did his homework. So,
we're gonna go to area code 615 now, then 801. 615 first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey boys, how you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic. What is on your mind?
Well, I just want to say thanks for having V on again the other night. I mean, he's always so informative. Do you guys have him lined up again pretty soon, or how's that going to work next time?
Whenever he thinks, and I just talked to Steve Quayle this morning, whenever he thinks that it's important, if he's got information that would be valuable to you, he'll come on. And it's kind of a
not last minute thing, but
play it by ear kind of thing.
Yeah, he'll get in touch with us, and then we'll have a show the next day or the day after.
But to answer your question, caller, I got a feeling that he will be on probably within the next 10 days, because I do know, I believe in my heart, my spirit, in my mind, that things are going to be happening to require his presence back on the program.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he has great information. Also, I heard you guys saying a minute ago that that guy could be a correspondent for the Adam Kokesh March, and I know that we've talked about how that can be provocateered very easily. So hopefully we can pray as a community as a whole that doesn't happen. But I was wondering, are you guys going to send anyone to Bilderberg, like a correspondent, or are you interested in maybe raising money yourselves to go, or I don't know if that's been brought up to you guys yet.
Caller, am I correct? Is this in Virginia this year again?
No, sir. They talked about that, but I think it ended up being Waterford, or it's in the UK, in London. I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, that's pretty much. That pretty much exceeds our budget. You wouldn't happen to have
and when is it?
flyer miles to go there, would you? I'm just not.
No.
Yeah.
What do you know when the date is?
I don't want to misquote it, but typically it's at the end or early June. So I think it's like June 2nd through the 4th or something. But also, I know you're going to the North Carolina, the Apex for that one meeting. So if we can get a bunch of people out there and gather, that would be great.
We'd love that. We'd love to have you. We'd love it. We'd love it if you could. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about March on Monsanto? Are you guys planning on doing anything for that in your local community? Maybe I figure that would be a good opportunity as well.
I've heard about the March for Monsanto. I have not.
Well, let me just stop because I want to say this. There are some things that we know about that people are doing.
You're going to have to fill me in because this wee stuff is...
No, we talked about this earlier, but we'll let you know more here in the coming day or two or three, okay? Just hang in there with us on that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job, and obviously I figure your blog talk problems are kind of clearing up. It sounds like... the squeaky wheel, what is the old saying, squeaky wheel gets attention, or so. But yeah, and you got to really think about it. Like, the government must have been jamming enemy lines on Blog Talk there for a while because you guys have such a huge fan base here, and you're the #1 program typically under current events and the popular section. You always have one of your latest programs up there. So it's a good medium to spread intel, and it's also becoming a more well-known site, I would hope so. So just keep it up on that front, guys.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
we appreciate it. We appreciate hearing from you, and God bless you. Thank you so much. And yeah, we're working the. I get an email every day. What are you doing about sound issues? We're working it out. However, it's you'll see. It's
we really appreciate your feedback, and we are reaching a lot of people. Our audience continues to grow, not only in America but across the world as people reach out from all kinds of countries, and it's thanks to people like you and everybody else who listens and who spreads the word about the show and engages and is part of the show that we are growing. And we want to thank you and all the other callers and listeners and people who do help with that.
Yeah, God bless you, my friend. You're the man. All right. Yeah. Wow.
All right. Thanks for your call.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on. You have a good night.
I too. I'll call in another time.
I hope, by the way, that we can meet in Apex and put a face to the name or put a face to the voice anyway. And if not, certainly another time. God bless.
All right. Thank you. 801, I think I said was next. Yep, 801. We're coming to you. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me then? I really, really appreciate your show. I wish it was 8 hours long. You guys give people a chance to talk, which is really rare. And you can't get a lot of calls in that way. People get a chance to express themselves completely, and what a blessing that is. Really appreciate your show. I've been sending you emails along with Steve Quayle and concerning an open letter that I've written. And
oh yes, I've got that. Caller, I've got that. Okay, it's not that I've gotten it. I'm just not sure what to do with it. Okay.
Well, it has to do with question of Joe tonight, so I won't have a lot of time, but I would really appreciate it if you get a chance to read it, to let me know and give me some feedback like Steve has, so that we can begin to talk about it, because it is very germane to Joe's question. Joe, would you mind repeating the question that you began with tonight, so I could address it?
It was, I wanted to take callers on where they thought our place in the battle was, whether the battle is spiritual or in a physical battle or a resistance type battle to take back the nation, what people felt was their duty or what they felt they should do in this battle. And
they're calling, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get a sense of where people were.
Yeah, let me give you my position on this, because today I wrote a letter to Steve, and I CC'd you guys, but it had to do with Nathan, what's his last name, Leal?
Leal, yeah.
Yeah, and you had him on your program here a few weeks back. It was a really great program, but he used a transcript of that and posted it on his website, The Watchman's Cry, I believe, and it was fantastic because it addressed this very question. It he had these 3 dreams, if you recall, and the upshot of it, and I know I don't have that much time, so I'm going to try to be quick here, but the upshot was that he was begging people not to be caught up in this civil war. He saw an ambush. He saw sort of a motley march of a huge number of people, and he saw then an empty church and a train wreck. And then he proceeded to interpret those in terms of what people want to do, and he says it's natural, right, to want to take up arms, to want to do something, and rather than just lie down and let them roll over us. And his opinion is nothing's going to stop the New World Order. That was in his transcript. I don't recall him saying that on the program, but he says we're not going to stop them. That's his opinion. And he referred to Isaiah and the situation that the house of Israel was in at that point in time in chapter 30. And I thought it was so perfect to be able to answer Joe's question with that portion of Isaiah in chapter 30. And what I would like to do is ask Joe or the audience, what would be the answer to Joe's question if our situation was the one that it is explained in Isaiah chapter 30? In other words, if we were the Jews in that time facing the destruction. If you recall, if you read verses 1 through 10 of that chapter, we see the Lord upbraiding Israel as a rebellious people would say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceit. And then in verse 11, it's really the punchline. He says they say, cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. Cause
Go ahead.
Israel cease from before us, is what the people said. They did not. They rejected the prophets. They rejected what the Lord was telling them. And for this cause, he says, because they then turned to arms, they turned to trusting in Egypt, and that was folly. He says that for thus saith the Lord God, I can't remember in which verse now, the Holy One of Israel, because you despise this word, this iniquity shall be unto you as a breach ready to fall. And oh my goodness, that's a perfect description of where we're at now. Everybody's saying, well, when are these things going to happen? And nobody knows. It's like a breach in a wall ready to fall. And you can't tell exactly when it's going to fall, but boy, you know it's going to fall. And then he describes the result of that it will break into pieces, so much so that there won't be a piece big enough to scoop up a coal from the fire or to carry water in. I mean, it is tremendous when you start understanding this. But here's the key. Those people were the covenant people of the Lord. That's why it was so incumbent upon them to do as he said, be still and wait upon him. So if you read in my website, voicesfromthedust.org, and especially read that open letter, I try to explain why how that situation applies to us. The Lord is saying that we must flee to his mountain. And to flee to his mountain means to stand in holy places and not be moved. And the psalmist explains to us, and you'll see that in the open letter, in Psalm 24, that the way to ascend to the mountain of the Lord is to repent, to have clean hands and a pure heart, and the Lord then will bless us. But the important thing to understand now is that we must enter into his covenant. The only salvation remaining for the Gentiles is to be identified, is for them to be identified in the same covenant and to worship at the same altar as Israel. That is the word of God from the prophets, and I'm trying to help people understand that.
You were so right. And in Isaiah, if you go further through 36, into 36, in the book I was reading, it references about Hezekiah, and it talks about how Jerusalem was overtaken, and the people in Jerusalem were deceived because they did not put their trust into the Lord. And 36 verse 5 says, I say, sayest thou, I have counsel and strength for war. Now on whom dost thou trust, that thou rebellest against me? Lo, thou trustest the staff, this broken reed on Egypt, wherein a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt, all that trust in him. And it goes on to say, but if you trust in the Lord, who is in high places.
That's right. Now,
yeah.
Here's the thing. In the Voices from the Dust, you will find that there is a moral imperative for all Christians. They have to decide if this word, and I quote it extensively in the open letter and also explain it very thoroughly on the site, if this word from God if this word that's represented as the Word of God is the Word of God indeed, then we flee to his holy mountain. And you will see that he will protect us with his power, even unto destroying the enemies of his people by fire, if it so be. So, how important. I've been trying. Steve actually read the open letter at voicesfromthedust.org, and he wrote back and said it was just 2 words, but it was wonderful. Well done, is what he said. And
look, I got that letter as well, along with your website, but I'm still, well, I guess from my point of view, occupy until I come. All right, I'm trying to get in, and I think I can't be the only one. Maybe I'm dense, folks. I can't be the only one who's thinking this. What are you telling us? We're supposed to flee?
We're supposed
physically
to survive.
flee? Right. And I agree with that. But
and
are we not
instructed?
But are we not instructed to occupy until I come? In other words, are we not instructed to
occupy this earth?
Well, right. I mean, you could go to Luke 19,
Doug.
you can go to Acts 1, you can go to Revelations 20, you can go to John 14, John 10, Revelations 20.
But remember, Doug, the message of the open letter is that we have received further light and knowledge. That is the key. The Lord knows our situation was all predicted. It was predicted that it would come about because of secret combinations, secret cartels. It would come about because of the of the designs of the remnant. He calls them the remnant of the heathen, which is really, well, if I had time, I'd explain it, but I explained it in the open letter, so I don't want to repeat that.
Right, and I've got that. Like I said, yes. Go ahead.
That's the understanding we have to have, that he has revealed through prophet the things that we must do, and you know, it's really a challenge. When I started doing this, how am I going to explain this? I had no idea. I prayed and fasted and tried to do the best I could to try to explain what this would be so that I could get it out on the table. We need to get it out on the table. Everybody knows certain things about the Mormons, but these things they don't know. They don't know that what the Book of Mormon actually says. They go to the musical. They read the things that people say. It's a distraction. You have to understand that book predicted all of what has happened to us now and what is going to happen. For instance, how the great union of the great and abominable church is going to gather its multitudes upon the earth to fight against the church of the Lamb of God. Now, what I'm trying to say is that just because Israel was the covenant people of the Lord, that became an iniquity to them. They were rejecting the word of the Lord that they had covenanted with. The Gentiles have that covenant, but you have to understand they were grafted in, according to Romans chapter 11. They were grafted into the mother tree. But Paul tried to explain to them and warn them that they shouldn't be wise in their own conceits, because the Lord could graft again into the mother tree the Jews. Remember how he was trying to explain how they were the elect. Well, this key of the elect is what we really need to understand, because the Lord has set his hand a second time to gather his people, and he has said that the terrible one shall be brought to naught. The terrible one is the New World Order. It's just such a tremendous subject. I just wanted to get it out on the table. I know.
All right. No. Promote your website, or wait a second. The two questions here. You mentioned the Mormons, the book, or the Latter-day Saints. What's your position on the Mormons? That
I am a Mormon.
Okay.
Steve put me back, and he says, "Are you LDS?" And I said, "Yes, sir, through and through, true blue through and through." And of course, then all the prejudice and whatnot against the Mormons.
Now it's coming back to me. Okay, yeah, I did see that exchange of the exchange there. Okay, okay. Well, all right.
It's hard. It's really hard to say this. I understand that. That's why the Mormon Church probably really doesn't say it today directly, because it's. How do you explain this? But it's coming to pass such that it has to come out. It is coming out, and there's no salvation. I'll say it again. The way the proclamation in 1845 from the Mormon Church, the only salvation remaining for the Gentiles is to be identified, same covenant, and to worship at the same altar as Israel. Now that's going to cause a huge reaction among a lot of people because of the different feelings now. This idea of Zion, and the Zion in the land of America, they haven't heard about, but the Lord has consecrated America for the gathering of his people and the building of a new city called New Jerusalem, where his people can gird up their loins looking forth for his coming in glory. Nobody knows this stuff unless they understand the Book of Mormon and the Latter-day Saints. And
well, all right. We're going to have to cut it right there.
We got 90 seconds left. I want to thank you for your call, and we'll hope to hear from you again. God bless.
Yeah. Joe. Yeah.
What the caller was getting into is something we don't have time to comment on today, right now, and I'm going to do some research on his site, voicesfromthedust.org. Voicesfromthedust.org.
One thing I did not give you, Joe, is the full, folks, the full exchange, email exchange that he referenced, and I'll give that to you. because I just didn't realize it was going to become an issue tonight.
Anyway, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We are going to be back here tomorrow at the same time. I want everybody, if they can find it in their hearts, to say a prayer for our good friend and listener, Larry.
60
from
seconds.
Buffalo, as he lost his German Shepherd
His German
today.
Shepherd passed away. And you know what? The dogs, and I'll just say this, dogs really... They have a spot in our families, and it's a very difficult time when you lose a part of your family,
Yes,
four-legged
it is.
part of your family, and I know that feeling. Larry, hang in there, my brother. God bless you. But folks, again, prepare. We need preparations. We need everyone to prepare. Time is short.
God bless each and every one of you. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time, 8 p.m., and have a good night and stay safe.
Good night,
until
everyone.
tomorrow.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.